Welcome everybody to BioStock Live from Stockholm. Exciting companies, no less than 7 Swedish and Danish companies will be presenting here today. Within a broad area of oncology, we have inflammatory diseases, we have obesity, we have cocaine and opioid dependency treatments, and we are really looking forward to an exciting and interesting day. My name is Jonas Sørensen. I'm the CEO and editor of BioStock, and first up I would like to welcome today's first speaker, Christine Lind of Medivir. Welcome, Christine.
Thank you, Jonas. Good morning, everyone. I have the honor of kicking off the company presentations just after Jonas. I'm very, very excited to present Medivir to you today and the company that we have become. So just very briefly, who is Medivir? We're a bit of a new company, having transformed ourselves over the last few years. What's not new is our world-class scientific expertise. So this is 30 years of drug discovery where we've had in our in-house labs with our abilities now turned on cancer and being able to deliver new drug opportunities to cancer patients. The second thing that we've built over the last few years is a clinical pipeline. This is a portfolio of programs that are in the clinic with a good balance both from early stage development all the way through late stage development, as well as opportunities that attack both orphan diseases as well as multi-billion-dollar opportunities in the clinic. In addition, the company has had a very strong focus on commercial opportunities over the last years that it's been operating. We have in our history delivered more than 20 global partnerships and intend to do that again. And we've brought 2 products from idea all the way to the market. So 2 programs that have made it from our labs and have become commercial opportunities. Especially the one that Medivir is best known for, which was our hepatitis C compound Orexo, that became a $3 billion drug. In-house in the company, we have competencies that allow us to deliver everything from discovery of new drugs all the way up through regulatory approvals and the ability to bring drugs to market. This is our strategy. We have 3 main prongs to the strategy today. The first is to discover new drugs, which means leveraging our scientific expertise to be able to build our pipeline in oncology. This is in the areas that we've built up over 30 years, protease inhibitors and nucleoside prodrugs. This is also to be able to develop new drugs. So this is drug development in areas of very high unmet need, which for us is primarily cancer, but also includes osteoarthritis. And the third strategy that we have, of course, is to partner many of our compounds and through these collaborations be able to increase the value of our programs. We do this in 2 ways, certainly one with academic partners to be able to bring new ideas into Medivir, but also in a second way, which is with industrial partners to be able to bring products closer to market. One very good example of this is our collaboration with GlaxoSmithKline that's ongoing today. They have the over-the-counter drug called Zovi Duo, and they sell that product for us. We receive royalties. The second example of that that's also very good and very new is MIV-802, which is a new drug for hepatitis C. This is a major collaboration with a Chinese company called Ascletis, where they intend to bring that drug to Chinese patients in order to cure their hepatitis C. Ascletis has actually just recently gone public on the Hong Kong Exchange and notified that they intend to drive our program into the clinic starting next year. So this is the Medivir oncology drug development pipeline. 4 programs in clinical development. As I mentioned, a very strong and balanced pipeline across the spectrum. We have just very briefly at the top here, remetinostat, which is uniquely a topical HDAC inhibitor. I'll tell you a little bit more about this drug as we go forward. This is a phase 3 ready compound. We're currently in discussions with the FDA for this compound, and this one has a $1 billion market opportunity if we only look at the US. Our second drug in development is called birinapant. This is a SMAC mimetic, which is, again, something I'll explain in just a moment. This is currently in a phase 1 portion of a phase 1/2 trial in combination with a drug called Keytruda, one of the world's leading immuno-oncology drugs, and this has a multi-billion-dollar revenue potential. MIV-818 is our third drug in the pipeline. This is aimed at liver cancers. This is a very interesting disease in that it is an orphan disease in Western markets, in the US and in Europe, but is a truly significant problem in Asia, and I'll explain that a little bit more as well. And of course, last but not least, MIV-711, which is our cathepsin K inhibitor, comes from our in-house development. This is for osteoarthritis and also has blockbuster opportunity. We've just recently completed our phase 2 program for this drug and look forward to partnering it. So a little bit about each of these programs, and I will start with MIV-711. This is our drug for osteoarthritis. What's interesting about osteoarthritis as a disease and in terms of drug treatments there are no available drug treatments today for osteoarthritis. Nothing that actually affects your joint structure and changes the progression of your disease. And this is exactly what MIV-711 is intended to do. What we've been able to show in the phase 2 study that we recently completed is an extremely strong, significant, statistically significant effect on joint structure, and especially in joint bone area, which is one of the most important things to show in the disease, as well as on cartilage, which is the second most important thing to be able to show in the disease on structure. In addition to being able to show a statistically significant effect on the structure itself, we were able to also demonstrate in just a very short period of time, in just 6 months of treatment, very positive signals on clinical symptoms. What are clinical symptoms? This is pain and function, your ability to feel better and your ability to feel better when you're walking upstairs, for example. In addition to that, we also showed a safety and tolerability profile that supports the late-stage development for this drug, which of course is very important to allow a partner to take this forward. This is a very significant disease, as I mentioned. Over 30 million adults in the US alone, 240 million people worldwide affected by this disease, and an enormous opportunity for a drug that actually can change the progression of your disease. The second drug in our pipeline is called remetinostat. What's unique about this drug is that even though what's called HDAC inhibitors have been approved for late stages of disease and use on those patients, those drugs are too toxic and too intolerable to be able to use on early stage patients of their disease. This is a cancer, it is a blood cancer, but it comes out in your skin. So what that means is that patients have a very high unmet need for a drug that actually is both tolerable and works on their cancer. This is actually the majority of the market that is at the early stage of disease. 75% of patients are at early stages of disease as opposed to late stages of disease. We already have phase 2 data for this program as well, and this is the program that we intend to drive forward through approval with a pivotal study. What we showed in our phase 2 program was the ability to have an effect both on the lesions. This is a 40% response at the top level. This is a good effect on patient lesions, as well as the effect on their most significant quality of life problem. This is called pruritus. It's an extremely significant itch. An itch that keeps you up at night, an itch that causes you to scratch to bleeding. This is a terrible symptom of their disease, and we were able to demonstrate effect on this symptom as well. In addition to the drug actually working, it is, of course, very balanced in that it has a highly tolerable safety profile with no side effects that were seen with other HDAC inhibitors. So we were able to show in the phase 2 program exactly this balance of efficacy on the cancer as well as safety and tolerability. And we intend to repeat this in a phase 3 program so that we can bring this drug to patients. The third drug in development is called birinapant. This is also for cancer. This is a uniquely potent drug. And what we're able to show here, I will tell you in just a moment. This is a very complex development program, certainly, but a very targeted and easy patient population. I think we've probably all heard about the fantastic things that immune oncology has done for cancer patients. Patients who were able to be at least live significantly longer than they could have before. What's perhaps lesser known, and despite there being over $10 billion in revenues for these drugs, is that there are significant patient populations for whom these drugs do not work at all. Indeed, in the cancer that's called here microsatellite stable colorectal cancer, the response rate for these patients on Keytruda or other immuno-oncology agents like that is close to 0. It's in these patient populations that we are aiming the development of birinapant. What do we have with birinapant? We have both a very strong rationale for why this should work together with Keytruda, one of the major immuno-oncology drugs, which shows in preclinical models that the two drugs together are much better than either drug separately, and certainly than no drug at all. In addition to being able to show that preclinically, we have extremely good data from over 400 patients in cancer that allow us to see which patient populations birinapant can show responses in. Those 3 patient populations we have outlined here and are chosen for our phase 2 portion of the phase 1/2 program, where the 3 populations, colorectal cancer, ovarian cancer, and cervical cancer, have a few things in common. The first is very low responses to Keytruda, so that we have a high unmet patient need. The second thing is prior clinical data with birinapant, either alone or in combination with chemotherapy, that has showed that we're able to achieve some level of response. The third thing is overexpression of the target protein that birinapant attacks. This implies that the tumor shows more of this particular protein, and therefore we have a better chance of actually targeting that specific tumor type. So with those 3 things together, we have a clinical study collaboration with Merck, known as MSD in Europe. They provide us Keytruda at no cost. They also provide us with their knowledge on immuno-oncology in the form of spending time with us on a joint development committee. We, on the other hand, get to retain full rights to birinapant. So we owe Merck nothing at the end of this study, and we get to keep our data. We're currently in the phase 1 portion of this study, and we expect that data from the phase 1 portion to be able to be announced later this year. And then we will seek to expand the study into the phase 2 portion and those 3 specific cancer patient types that I mentioned. This is certainly a very exciting opportunity for us, and as I mentioned, a multi-billion-dollar revenue potential. Our 4th drug in our pipeline is called MIV-818. This comes from our in-house labs and works very well on our nucleotide prodrug technology. So this is something that Medivir is an expert in, and we have the ability to do something with a drug that I will shortly tell you about. Why liver cancer? So liver cancer is the target for this particular drug. Medivir, I mentioned our hepatitis C experience in the past, bringing a drug to market there. We've become extremely good at targeting the liver specifically. Liver cancer is an enormous problem. Even though it's an orphan disease in Western markets and much more common in Asia, it is still the most deadly and fastest growing cancers in the US. So it may not be an orphan disease for long. This liver cancer is also very interesting versus other tumor types, which is to say there are many what's called mutations in a particular liver cancer. And that means that many targeted therapies that target a very specific type of tumor are unable to work in liver cancer because the rest of the tumor continues to survive, even when you've killed part of the tumor. What we're able to do is take a broadly what's called DNA damaging agent, something that kills cells, and make it more tolerable, because of course we don't want to kill all the cells in your body, we just want to kill the liver cancer. What we're able to do is take this very toxic substance, an original drug called troxacitabine, and turn it into something a bit safer, but still more efficacious. How do we do that? We look at the drug profile of the original drug, the one called troxacitabine, and we can see that it has worked. It is capable of actually killing lots of cells. It was actually active in cancer models in the clinic, but the reason why it failed is because it was too toxic. The drug gets lots of places, and that's not what you want. What we do with MIV-818 is we take our proprietary nucleotide prodrug technology, and we're able to specifically drive this drug into the liver. Take it as a pill, it passes through your gastrointestinal system intact and goes directly into the liver. Then it gets trapped in the liver and stays there and actually becomes the active drug in the liver. this active troxacitabine that we're looking for, it becomes active only in the liver. What else we do there is we're also able to specifically ensure that that drug attacks liver cancer cells and not healthy liver cells, which is also, of course, what you want if you have liver cancer. We have full preclinical data on this program that will allow us to start the phase 1 study later this year. And in addition, what we were able to show in that preclinical program is a 100-fold difference in safety and efficacy in preclinical models, of course, versus the parent troxacitabine. So this is quite exciting to be able to demonstrate a 100-fold difference in the drug, and we really look forward to bringing this to cancer patients in the phase 1 study. That phase 1 study, unlike other phase 1 studies that you might be familiar with that take all sorts of cancer patients or all sorts of types of diseases, this phase 1 study, because it is a liver-targeted only drug, will only take patients that have liver cancer. And so in our phase 1 study, we will already be able to demonstrate some level of effect in the target patient population. That was a brief look at our clinical pipeline and each of the programs that are in it. We also look forward to, as I think I mentioned, across each of our programs, delivering quite a lot of news for the rest of the year. We've been quite heavy on announcements this year in terms of new data coming out on each of our programs, having started the year with announcing that our preclinical program for MIV-818 was complete and that we would be filing to allow us to start that phase 1 study. We've also announced data across each of our projects, whether it's MIV-711 for osteoarthritis, remetinostat in cutaneous T-cell lymphoma, the birinapant program for solid tumors, or of course MIV-818 for liver cancer. As I mentioned, the 3 upcoming milestones later this year and early next year as well will be the start of the liver cancer study in phase 1 with MIV-818, the completion of the phase 1, or what's known as the dose escalation portion of the birinapant combination study with Keytruda, and the start of the phase 3 program for remetinostat and CTCL as soon as we have completed discussions with the FDA to allow us to have a pivotal program that would lead to an approvable drug. So we look forward to sharing this news with you as soon as we are able to. A brief moment on our financials. Our cash position at the end of the second quarter was approximately 440 million Swedish kronor, or in US dollars, $50 million. This allows us to invest in the R&D pipeline with more than 1 year of capital runway, and also we can supplement that with additional out-licensing. We are traded on the Nasdaq Stockholm main board listing under ticker MVIR and do have one single class of shares, making a very interesting capital structure, very clean capital structure. So in summary, why Medivir? We have a very strong pipeline from discovery through clinical stages, primarily focused on oncology. Significant catalysts with news flow coming over multiple projects over the next few months and beyond. Near-term opportunities for us to partner our drugs and be able to receive revenues from that partnership. And we've done this before. We have a track record of having delivered drugs to market and having delivered data to market. So with that, I will turn it over for questions. Yes?
What happens with the MIV-711?
The question was what happens with MIV-711, which is our osteoarthritis drug. Our intention with that drug is to partner it, to be able to take it forward into the pivotal studies that will be needed for sort of approval for osteoarthritis patients. We have quite good phase 2 data on that, and so we're now looking for a partnership. Great.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jonas.
Interesting presentation.
Thank you.
First of all, I'd like to see if there's anyone in the audience who has any questions for you today. Anyone feel the need to ask something for Christine? Don't be shy. In that case, I'll go ahead and say.
Yes,
you have a very exciting, broad portfolio and a lot of interesting stuff coming up. What would you yourself consider to be the most pivotal catalyst for Medivir in the near future, say in 6 months' time or something?
You asked for one. I guess I'll give you 3.
Okay.
which I think is one of the beauties, frankly, of the Medivir pipeline, is that we do have multiple catalysts. Of course, one is a potential partnership for MIV-711 for osteoarthritis, and that will be a very important data point and moment point for Medivir, both in terms of the ability to receive revenues for that drug, but also to ensure that that drug gets developed for patient populations and actually gets to market. The second thing is the next upcoming news event, which is actually the start of the clinical study for MIV-818, which is our liver cancer drug. And so we really look forward to starting that clinical study and demonstrating to our investors that we deliver our programs on time, on schedule, and as we said, and of course moving that into the clinic. And then the third most important catalyst for us as well will be the data on the birinapant Keytruda combination study for solid tumors, and that's expected in the fourth quarter of this year. So that will be very exciting data, which gives us an initial sense of response in patients, but will also give us the right dose so that we know what drug to take forward to patients in the phase 2 study.
Yeah. So a lot of good stuff coming up. Do you see any special challenges coming up for you in the future? Or
special
is
challenges.
Everything.
Drug development is always a challenge. I think we of course have very competent scientists that are inside the house to make sure that we deal with those challenges. There's always new data in a trial that you need to look at and make sure you understand what that is, and be able to deliver it in a comprehensive way to investors so that you understand what we have as well. Of course, one of the deepest challenges for us is to try to translate very complex science into something that investors can understand.
And in terms of focus market-wise, where is your primary focus?
It's absolutely cancer. So
Yeah.
we are a cancer-focused company going forward. And of course, the osteoarthritis program is in our pipeline because of its value, but also because of our scientific capabilities that brought that drug in. But the next step will be to out-license it so that Medivir continues to focus exclusively on cancer.
Yeah. Good luck with everything.
Thank you.
If no one has, you have a question? That's great. Let's hear
Even
it.
though you have more than 400 million today, the studies that are decided will cost quite a lot of money. Can you go into the details somewhat? How much money will the remetinostat study cost, for instance?
Sure. So with the cash that we have today, we have the ability to get through each of the key next inflection points, which of course allows us to take a decision on whether it is a good idea to continue to move forward or not, and therefore continue to invest in the programs. Just very briefly, the numbers that we do have in our corporate presentation as well, but the remetinostat phase 3 study is expected to be approximately $50 million in total cost. This includes both the cost of the study as well as a milestone payment that we pay to the company that we acquired the drug from. So it does include both of those things. The birinapant program, we've also announced that the entirety of the phase 1/2 program is expected to cost around $20 million. That particular program is of course already underway, so not all of the 20 is still remaining, but that of course is the overall cost of that particular program. MIV-818, we haven't said specifically yet how much that one is going to cost, but it is also designed much like birinapant as a phase 1/2 program. But we do expect that it will cost a little bit less. It is a bit more targeted of a program in terms of patient population than birinapant, if that helps in terms of the clinical studies.
Great. Christine, you will be doing an interview with my colleague Linus in a little while.
Yes.
And I'm sure he will be able to dig even deeper and ask more questions.
Fantastic. I look forward to it.
Thank you for today.
Thank you, Jonas.
Let's give her a warm hand.
Thank you very much.
Okay, let's see then. Next up in our program, we have Orexo, Nikolaj Sørensen. Orexo was actually here earlier this year. We had a special event focusing on opioid crisis, and it's going to be really interesting to hear what has happened since then. Just going to see if we can change this presentation as well. Do we have technical help for that? I'm just afraid I'm gonna screw it up. There we go. Perfect. Okay, so it's a pleasure for me to introduce Nikolaj Sørensen from Orexo. Welcome, Nikolaj. Nikolaj, sorry.
It's a pleasure to be here. And unfortunately, I can just hang on your comments here about the opioid crisis. It's not been better. It's on the contrary. I think it's when we thought it couldn't get worse, it's gone much worse. And I will come back to that in a few seconds. So I'm here to present after what I think is one of the best quarters in the Orexo history. It is the best quarter if you look at what is continuously revenue streams that we generate. We have had better quarters, but that's always been because of one single big milestone. This quarter we actually had a really good result based on our own sales of Zubsolv in the US, and I'll come back to that in a few seconds. So, what is Orexo? For those of you who are new to the company, we are a company who have been specializing in drug delivery and formulation technologies. Based on that, we have produced 4 products that have been approved in multiple different countries. We have, since 2013, we have focused a lot to build our own specialty pharma company with our own commercial operations. And since 2016, we actually turned the company from an R&D company to a profitable specialty pharma company. And I'm quite proud to see that we have seen the profit and cash flows to improve from 16 into 17 and also into 18. So we're on a good trajectory from a cash perspective. We have a situation where, as a profitable company, we have a strong cash position that is growing. We are very close to 500 million SEK, or about $55 million US. And that gives us a lot of freedom from a strategic perspective and how we're going to take this company to the next level. And this has really been one of my targets. Today, we have the headquarters in Uppsala, where the company was founded. But we also have growing operations in the US, where we are headquartered in Morristown, New Jersey. Looking at our pipeline and products, then the lead product, and where we have basically 90% of our attention, is on Zubsolv, which is a treatment of opioid dependence. I will talk a lot about Zubsolv in a few minutes. But we also have Abstral, which is a fast-acting fentanyl, so it's a very potent opioid, which is sold through a partner, Kyowa Kirin. It's doing very well in Europe, not that well in the US, where fentanyl has been very closely associated with the crisis of opioid addiction. Edluar is an insomnia product that was held by the Swedish company Meda, and when Meda was acquired by Mylan took over the global rights to this. One of the major happenings in our Q2 was our partner in Europe, Mundipharma, were launching Zubsolv for treatment of opioid addiction in Sweden and Germany. And now during the autumn, we are going to add more and more countries as we get pricing and reimbursement. The product was approved in the autumn last year, but in Europe, unfortunately, the pricing and reimbursement process in many countries is quite lengthy and time-consuming. But we expect to see more and more countries being added during the autumn. But it is fully in control of Mundipharma and not something that we are directly involved with. Then we have our pipeline, where I think I can take OXMPI very, very shortly. It's right now held by a company called Gesynta. It's a Swedish consortium of researchers who have a good idea of how to work with this active substance that was developed by Orexo and then taken further by Boehringer Ingelheim and now taken back to Sweden by this Gesynta. But here I promised them not to say that much about what target they're working on before we get a little further into the clinical program. And then we have our focus, our own internal development. And here we have 3 programs we're working a lot with, and I will talk a little more about, put them in context. But right now I can say the first one is OX382, which is based on the same active substance as Zubsolv. It's a buprenorphine product, but where Zubsolv is a sublingual product. That means you take it under the tongue, wait for it to dissolve, and then get the effect. We are trying to develop a product that you can swallow. We did one clinical trial in the beginning of the year. It didn't give the expected, or we say the results that we hoped for. We've gone back to the drawing table. We have some new ideas, and we're actually doing some new tests in animals now during the autumn to see if the new versions of this formulation can work. And I think this is an aspirational target for us to do. A lot of companies have tried that, But I think there's a lot of advantages with a medicine that you can swallow. And we've seen, I can't come up with any other this category of medicine where a sublingual tablet is actually beating a tablet that you can swallow. This will make it much more easy for the patients. But it is difficult. A lot of companies have tried and failed, but I think we have some good hypotheses on how we can solve, and we might need to do several different tests on different formulations, but we have a strong belief that we will succeed. The other two products we have are, I think the biology is not that complex. It's more the commercial landscape that can be, I think, can be a showstopper for this, and that's how differentiated will these products become based on the market. And the first one is OX124, which is opioid overdose rescue medication. The market leader in the US today, Narcan, I saw was sold this morning to a new company, Emerging Biosolutions, for $735 million. It's a nasal spray. We have looked at that product several years ago. We should probably have captured at that time. But we have seen there are some shortcomings in the way it's work. And one of the shortcomings is that we see that a lot of the people who are dying today are dying from very potent fentanyls like carfentanil and fentanyl. And this product doesn't really work for about 30% of the patients. Knowing that, we're trying to solve that with our formulation. Also, we're seeing some patients who are getting what we call a double dip. So you get your rescue medication, but when the naloxone set out, you still have enough opioid in your blood to get a new overdose. So you need a second dose, and we're trying to solve that as well. Can we do a product? I'm pretty certain we can do a product. The question is it good enough to be differentiated from Narcan, which is the market leader? So we will have the first clinical study going on basically very shortly within the next half year. Then we have OX338, which is an NSAID product. I say, why do you do an NSAID product? I think one of the issues that we have seen is that people were so convinced that opioids in the US were the solution to pain. So the biggest pharma market in the world were basically stopping to use NSAID products. No one was really looking at development because there's no money in it. No one wanted to use it. But now we can see the flip side of that people are dying, and actually a lot of the people who get addicted to opioids get their first exposure to opioids when they're in the emergency rooms or with the doctor, with the dentist. So actually looking back at some of the old insights and see how can we improve the formulation of that, I think is one of the solutions to the opioid crisis, and we're looking at that as well. Taking where we want the company to be, as I said back in 2013 when I became the CEO, we were an R&D company. We had a pipeline, we had a product that was quite close to be approved. We had a lot of hopes to that product. It took a little longer than we anticipated, but the last couple of years really been making this company financially solid to be able to take the next steps. And this is where we're focusing now. How can we build the pipeline and broaden the base of Orexo? And we're doing that from a position with about 500 million in cash. We have 325 million in debt. So we have a pretty strong net cash position. And I think that enables us to compete for some assets that were basically impossible for us to do before without having to come to our shareholders and ask for more money. We basically generate cash flow ourselves, and we have a pretty strong base to stand from. And this is one of the visions and where we are going to work. And just looking at so the focus areas that we have is clearly opioid addiction. And looking at how do we attack opioid addiction? We have Zubsolv for treatment of addiction. OX382, if we succeed with a swallowable tablet, I think will be a new transformational medicine in this space. It's basically, you see, it's a replacement of Zubsolv and other products in this category. One of the comorbidities of opioid addiction, unfortunately, is that you die. You get an overdose. And here we see that the product that exists in the market today have some shortcomings that we're trying to solve with our formulation technologies. OX124 is that category. And then we have OX338, which is basically a prevention. When we talk to patients and physicians, did they get the first exposure? It is not at a rock concert that someone gave them heroin. Basically, most of them, it is when they got an injury, sports injury in college was different. And then there are some of us who just feel good when we get an opioid. Most of us will feel nauseous and tired, but some of us will feel uplift and quite kind of what they would say, I feel, for the first time in my life, I feel really good. I feel like my life is easy. And I think that is the category that are subject to become opioid addicted. So looking at Zubsolv, very shortly, what we have done is that we're taking the market lead, and the market is something called Suboxone. When we start to develop Zubsolv, it only existed as a big tablet. It was dissolving quite slowly, had a nasty taste according to patients. We said, okay, we can do small tablets. We can do something that is tasting good, which is convenient. So we set out to do something that is smaller, more convenient, and more pleasant for patients. In the meantime, Suboxone came in a new shape in the form of a film, which is like a small piece of paper you put under the tongue. It still doesn't really have a pleasant taste, but it took away some of the shortcomings of the old tablet. But when we tested our product compared to the film, clearly the patients preferred the convenience. Then from a maybe a little naive European perspective, I think it's good to develop a product that is where you can get the same effect with less medication. This is an opioid. We are treating opioid addiction with what you can say an other opioid, but it's what's called a partial agonist. So it's something that doesn't really give you the same. You can't get high. It's very difficult to get an overdose. There are some hypotheses it's not really as addictive, but clearly it makes people able to work. But we said it's still something you would like to lower the dose. Then when we start to commercialize it, we realized that a lot of the patients, to finance the physicians, actually resold some of the prescription on the street. And then the lower dose was not positive because you got less paid for Zubsolv. And it's been one of the battles we've been fighting, but I think we have found ways to overcome it. And today, clearly, we are quite profitable. And we are, if you look at reformulation products, we're one of the products that have done the best for quite a few years. One thing that has been an issue for us, and for those of you who know Orexo and has been hanging over us like a wet carpet, both from a business development, corporate development, but also from a share price perspective, is that we have had a patent litigation against Actavis, which started in May of 2014. If you look at our share price, that's kind of where it started to go down. I think we're in a good track to reverse the decision from the district court to one of our three patents to 2032 was invalidated. We had an appeal in October last year. A hearing, normally you get a result within 5 months. It's now on Tuesday next week. It's 11 months, and I'm giving up to give any guidance. I don't know if it's an excuse, but I say it's the chairman of the bench of the judges. She's 92 years of age, and she's very clever, she's very smart, so no problem with that, but she's a little slower, and we can see that on all of her decisions. The one who takes a lot of time is actually her decisions. But it must be soon. I say every day that goes, we're one day closer, maybe it comes tonight. But we are very optimistic, and I think that is part of the rebounds in our share price during the summer, is that we did a rush in the spring to talk to institutional investors and explain more about the situation, about our patents. And I know some institutional investors, especially from Germany, went into the stock after I've done some due diligence on the legal situation. So clearly they believe we have a strong situation in the patent portfolio. And I think that is actually, when you saw during the summer, we were pretty well performing. Then on top of that, we had a very good second quarter, of course. So to the opioid addiction, the headlines, I could fill 10 pages with this. 3 years ago, I couldn't fill one because there are no front pages. If I should find something, it's a celebrity who's put into some rehab center. But now this is on the front line, and it's not strange because when you thought it couldn't get worse, and as I started, we saw last year more than 60,000 people were having a drug overdose, most of it involving opioids, nearly all, but not all. And then when the data come just 2 weeks ago in New York Times, we actually broke our curve here. So it's now 72,000 people who died. So when you saw a curve pointing upwards that you thought couldn't go more steep, it's actually accelerating. And what is happening in the US is that cheap fentanyl and carfentanil is used as the elephant tranquilizer, is coming into the heroin distribution chain. People want to buy the heroin that is the strongest, and for the dealers of heroin, they can buy cheap fentanyl, which probably come from China. And then to mix that, it's literally, it's not visible for the eye, the variation of what you should put into this heroin. That is the difference between people dying and people get a little bigger high. And that is what is happening right now. People are dying from fentanyl and carfentanil. It's not from heroin, it's of course heroin also, but it's really because there's no way anyone who's not a chemist who can do that. And I can tell you, when we are working with these opioids, our scientists are using basically space suits. They kind of walk around in these big suits to avoid any exposure, because they know the smallest grain of this could kill them. And here we see drug dealers who are sitting in a kitchen and using teaspoons and just mixing it around. This is what kills people. It's also what killing people in Sweden. And right now, there's no indication of this to stop, because there's obviously a supplier of very cheap fentanyl coming into the distribution chain in the US. So what are they doing? Here we have two relatively famous, at least for US listeners, Chris Christie and Patrick Kennedy, two of many who have really engaged themselves into this. And I think the big upside for us and everyone else working with opioid addiction is that is a movement to open up for more treatment. Today, even though they're talking and they are opening up more and more, we still see one of the biggest issues, there's a lack of access to physicians who can treat this. And to get access to treat it in the US, you need a special certification. But now we hear again and again, key stakeholders in the US that we actually need to make this a primary care product. This is the only way we can get a national coverage, is to make primary care physicians to treat those who have a light addiction, and those with a more severe addiction should then go to a specialist, just like we're treating depression. And I think even though we're not there yet, it is moving. And if that should happen, you're going from an active number of prescribers, which is around 5,000 to 6,000, to a potential prescriber base of more than 300,000. Does that have an opportunity for the patients? Definitely, but of course also for Orexo, because suddenly you're broadening out who can prescribe our products to many more patients. Looking at the market in the US, it has been growing very good. It's a very strong growth at the moment. I saw some updates from an analyst this Monday. It's now 15% growth over the summer compared to last year. It's very much driven by what we call the public sector, that is patients with an insurance but by Medicaid, which is for people with a low income in the US. That is really driving that. It has moved from what was commercial segment when we launched, were by far the largest, but today Medicaid is the largest segment, and actually even growing now is Medicare, which is for retired people. And that is actually quite scary at the moment. You see more and more addicts that are north of 60 and have retired. So it's actually something that hits everyone, not only the young and famous who are going to a rock concert. For Zubsolv, we have seen historically that the main driver for us, and this is coming back to how do you turn lemon into lemonade, and when the bitter taste of the market is that patients prefer the higher strength of the original brand, we go to the insurance companies and say, actually, do you know a lot of your products that you finance is used by patients who have not got it prescribed? So you're basically, as an insurance company, paying for someone else. And that have succeeded. It worked very well with United. We just got our United contract renewed. Wellcare is just running. We got Humana, we got Envision exclusive. CVS Caremark, after a few years, decided to take us back early this year. And every time we see these market access changes, we see a big jump in our prescription. And what's really encouraging for me is especially CVS Caremark. We're actually just been added back in competition with both generics and Suboxone, but we have by far outgrown CVS Caremark during the first half year than the market. So we're taking market share in CVS Caremark, and we earn much more on the products when we're non-exclusive than we do in the other products. So it is, I think, from a volume perspective, it's been a good summer. I think market share wise, even though I would like to see the market share growing, we're growing with the market. The market has a strong double-digit growth. We do have price increases in the space as well. But to really outgrow, we need to have some new market access agreements. Now we are getting close to get all of the market access positions for next year, so I have good hopes that we have some positive news to share during the autumn. Definitely so far we seem to regain all of the positions that we got last year. So Express Scripts, for example, came out a few weeks ago. So what does this mean from a profitability perspective? And now I actually just looked at the US business as alone. In the US we have been profitable for a while, but really looking at where we're moving, the second quarter gave us more profits in the US in terms of gross profit or EBIT than what we had. The first half year gave the same as we had for the full year last year. But what is even more encouraging is if we're looking a little ahead, where we'll spend a lot of time in the companies to improve our profitability and improve our gross margins, because we have a massive turnover. Our turnover in the US is north of $150 million. So every percent you can squeeze on the gross profit and you can work on the rebates and the pricing is a lot of money on the bottom line. So working on the cost of goods is something that we have worked intensively with. It's taking a little time and we have gone on some issues, but right now we are basically on track to deliver what we think compared to last year. We see in the end of the year we're down to about 20% lower. Next year we will be 25% or more, at least 25% lower than what we saw in 2017. And if you actually start to calculate how much money that means on the bottom line, it's quite a lot of money. And we continue to work on this. So I think there's a lot of hope for us to continue to pressure down our cost of goods. We know that in the event we should have generic competition, our cost of goods in this environment is absolutely competitive with the generic products that are in the market. So we could, even in that environment, we could easily price compete with where we are at the moment. So just rounding off on our financials, so very good growth in the US Q2 over Q1 with more than 20%. But actually, if we look in local currency, we're getting closer to 30%. So in US dollars, it's closer to 30% increase. Now coming into Q3 with the US dollars increase and probably very uncertain election outcome, I think we have a good position for even Q3 on the dollar. Looking at our total net revenue, we're close to 700 million on a 12-month running basis, which is turning into a profitability where if we're just looking at the last 12 months, we had an EBITDA of about 115. We have not reached that on a full year yet, but it's a good trajectory for the year. And from a cash perspective, I talked about 500 million. So just rounding it off, I think the storyline about Zubsolv is we are in the area, Orexo, we are in an area that is growing in the US. We're in an area that every politician in the US need to find a solution because a lot of the voters in the US have this close into their life. I think if I was presenting in the US and asked people to raise a hand with someone in their closer circle of friends and family who have been exposed to opioid addiction, everyone would raise their hand. That's the situation in the US at the moment. We're working from a very strong cash position. We have a pipeline, which I think is interesting. It was interesting to see that the competitor to OX124 was valued as $735 million this morning. Of course, they are the incumbent, but I think if we can do something that is better, that of course should have a good opportunity. Market access has been a significant driver. So far, we're at least keeping the position for next year, and we're working hard to have some good positive outcome also for next year. But there's definitely not a threat as I see it in market access. It's more an opportunity to improve where we are. We have launched in Europe, just started before the summer. In Sweden, it started in June. Everyone who's been working pharma in Sweden know that July is a dead month for launching products. So you do that basically in August and September. And Germany has their vacation in August. So I think before we really can expect to see something, we need to go in the end of the year. Then we're business development. We have a lot of dialogues and we have been actually bidding for a couple of products, but here we are in a Swedish environment, and I think we are a little more conservative than my US competitors. So we're not doing a deal just for doing a deal. We're doing a deal when we think it's a good opportunity, and that also means we step away for opportunities. Clearly, I should have bought Adapt 3-4 years ago, but at that time Orexo had no money to invest, so it was not really an alternative, as they just got valued to an immense amount of money. And then we're waiting for this decision, the patent litigation. I know a lot of you have been following us, have expected, just like me, it would come in the summer. But right now I can't. The record is a little more than 11 months it have taken to a decision, and we hit 11 months next Tuesday. So it can't be a long way from now. So thank you. And just as a final, we will have some presentation, copy of the presentations out in the coffee room if you're interested. Thank you.
Thank you, Nikolaj.
Thank you.
Very interesting. So basically, you could sum it all up with say that you have had a good year.
Yeah,
more or
so
less.
far at least. Yeah, and it looks good for the second half. Yes.
Yeah, a very strong period financially. Does that meet your expectations, or is it better?
We haven't communicated our expectations, but we did expect first half to be negative, and we were positive first half. So we expected Q1, we guided that it would be negative, but we also expected first half to be negative. But we actually made up the loss in Q1 even faster, and we did get a milestone. Some of you could argue in the Q2, okay, you got a milestone, but if you deduct the milestone, we still made a positive first half. And as we were guiding negative when we expected the milestone, I think you can conclude first half was better than we expected.
Good point. I turn to the audience. Anyone has any questions? Yeah?
If you win this lawsuit, do you expect to be compensated for past sales?
So we have not lost sales yet because they have not launched the product. So what we have lost is we paid more than 200 million Swedish kronor for the lawsuit. And here, unfortunately, as we lost on one of the patents in the district court, then our opponent can say we had a legitimate reason to basically file a patent litigation. If we had won everything in the district court, there could have been an opening for being compensated for part of the cost base. But where we are right now, we can't do that. So unfortunately, I think this is a little getting a parking ticket, and the only thing you can hope for is to keep the car. So, and I think we're in a good track to keep the car, but I don't think we can get any compensation for it. Yep.
What is the average time of treatment for a Zubsolv patient?
The average patient is on Zubsolv about 6 to 9 months. Unfortunately, the average patient who stop also come back. So it's the people who have succeeded to keep themselves abstinent is on a single-digit %. So even though you get abstinent for a period of time, then what often happens is you get a personal crisis or something, and you get an injury and you get exposed to opioids again, and then you get into the same once again. And I think that's so far there's no disease-modifying product in the market. So unfortunately, we see a lot of the patients come back.
So that's interesting in the view of your other projects in the opioid portfolio. Your strong financial position, does that enable you to speed up the process in those projects, or do you stick to the plan?
It enables us to take a little more risk, I think, to speed up in the terms of doing a little broader phase 1 trial. So we, on our OX124, normally we would test a phase 1 on a drug delivery maybe of 5 to 10 healthy volunteers, and you wouldn't have any control arms. But in this one, we are going with, I think, 4 different arms in the phase 1 trial, which is a little unique. So we actually even have an active comparator. And that, if we succeed, would make it much faster because we're also testing several different formulations. So that, I think, is due to our financial strength, so we can do that and don't bet on one. But if the one we had betted on had succeeded all the way, I think we would still have the same time. It's really, for us, the thing that takes time is of course the clinical trials, but it's as much the manufacturing and get stability data. You can't find, if you need to show that this product is stable for 12 months, of course you can do some acceleration, but really to get the label and the shelf life, you need to wait for 12 months. And that's, I think, is part of what is taking time for some of these products.
Yeah. So with 1 minute left during your time, what would you yourself consider to be the most important upcoming milestone or trigger for Orexo?
There's no doubt. It's the patent litigation. So if that one is going positive, it would be fantastic news for us. And then there's no turning back. It's just full speed ahead, finding some new business development opportunities. And of course, you can't do M&A, or, for example, or working on that front if you have a share that is very impacted by very binary decisions. So having that behind us, I think, will open up more avenues for the company.
We sure cross our fingers.
Thank you.
And thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you for your attention. Thank you.
So next up in our program, we have Sweden's only gene therapy company actually coming up. I'm happy to introduce to you Nilsson CEO of CombiGene, and he also brings a colleague, Kristina Agerman. Welcome, Jan.
Tack. Ja, trevligt att vara här. Jag kommer alltså att tala svenska. Och det beror delvis på att vi ska prata om en företrädesemission. Då ska vi inte rikta oss till den amerikanska marknaden. Precis som Jonas sa så är vi det enda, vad jag känner till, listade genterapibolaget i Sverige. Och vårt fokus är epilepsi. Genterapi är ju egentligen ett verktyg vi har för att kunna kurera eller bota eller lindra sjukdom. Ungefär som många andra läkemedel. Men genterapi ger oss möjligheten att vara väldigt precisa i var vi ger vår behandling. Och då kan man alltså få en större träffsäkerhet. Det innebär också att vi behöver inte behandla hela kroppen, utan vi kan behandla en del av kroppen. Vi får hög effekt och vi kan minimera biverkningarna. Bolaget är listat på Spotlight. Vi har vårt säte nere i Lund. Vi har varit ett läkemedelsbolag kan man säga ett läkemedelsutvecklingsbolag sedan 2014 när vi listade oss. Och det är alltså Karin som är forskning- och utvecklingschef, Karin Hageman, och jag heter Jan Nilsson. Det är liksom bolaget. Sen har vi flera lager av väldigt duktiga konsulter runt omkring oss som hjälper oss med läkemedelsutveckling. Vi är i den prekliniska fasen så vi har inte kommit in i människan nu. Jag tänkte lägga upp den här presentationen på det sättet att jag berättar lite grann kort om genterapi generellt först. Och sen lite grann om den potential vi kan se i den produkt som vi har. Sen kommer Karin att berätta lite grann om hur vår läkemedelskandidat fungerar. Och sen går jag lite grann inne på vad vi har åstadkommit hittills och några ord om den företrädesemission som vi annonserade förra veckan. Genterapi är ett hett område just nu när det gäller läkemedel. Det är ingen ny teknologi. Jag var engagerad i den första genterapistudien för så länge sedan som 1998 när jag var på ett amerikanskt läkemedelsbolag. Men det är inte förrän nu som proppen har gått ur att vi börjar se att det kommer färdiga läkemedel som bygger på genterapi. Det är ett hett område sa jag. Här ser ni exempel på vad som har hänt under första halvåret i år. Det är alltså över 300 kliniska projekt, alltså projekt som är i klinik. 34 av dem är i den sista fasen innan man lämnar in en ansökan om godkännande. Ni ser vilka områden som är de vanligaste, det är onkologi, hjärt- och kärl- och nervsystem. Och vi är ju i det senare området, alltså CNS. Under första halvåret i år så var det investeringar på nästan 6 miljarder dollar i det här området. Så de stora läkemedelsbolagen är väldigt intresserade av att plocka upp projekt inom typ genterapi eller cellterapi. Det är också ett paradigmskifte eftersom vi kan med genterapi hantera sjukdomar som man inte överhuvudtaget kan hantera med traditionella läkemedel. När vi har en felaktig gen till exempel så kan man gå in och ersätta den. Eller vi kan göra som vi gör och specifikt förstärka kroppens eget uttryck av någonting. Det här var en väldigt viktig dag. Jag sa att det var gammalt, eller man har hållit på länge med genterapi. Det här var första gången som den amerikanska läkemedelsmyndigheten godkände ett läkemedel som bygger på genterapi. Det var alltså förra året i augusti. Det är ett läkemedel som används på barn som har en svår form av leukemi som inte har kunnat hanteras med dagens traditionella läkemedel. Och sen dess har det kommit flera produkter både i USA och Europa när det gäller genterapi. Och om jag skulle tillåta mig att göra en liten jämförelse då, för jag sa ju att vi hade en högre träffsäkerhet, en högre specificitet. Om vi tittar på ett traditionellt läkemedel som man äter som en tablett till exempel. Och så jämför du med ett genterapeutiskt läkemedel. Så har jag satt upp på höger sida som ni ser där så har ni en substans som heter lamotrigin. Nu har jag valt ett exempel inom vårt eget område som är epilepsi då. Det är ett av de vanligaste epilepsiläkemedlen. Och det är någonting som man då äter varje dag, en tablett, livet ut. För att försöka kontrollera de kramper då som man har. Genterapi, det ger man inte på det sättet utan det ger man kanske en enda gång. Åtminstone under mycket, mycket lång tid sitter effekten kvar. Kanske 10, 15, 20 år. Vi ger behandling bara där sjukdomen sitter. Tabletten som ni tar, den tar via magen. Sen sprids den i hela kroppen. Och då får man naturligtvis effekter på andra organ än det som man önskar få effekter på. Så det är en väldigt riktad terapi. Så den har många fördelar, genterapi. Ja, hur många här i auditoriet känner någon som har epilepsi? Ja, det är också någonting som jag tror skiljer oss från många genterapibolag, nämligen att epilepsi är en vanlig sjukdom. Och då, ni som har bekanta som är drabbade av epilepsi vet ju också att det har en stor påverkan på de individernas livskvalitet. Det finns saker och ting som vi andra kan göra som de inte kan göra. Har man icke kontrollerad epilepsi så kan man inte köra bil. Man kanske inte kan cykla. Man drar sig för att gå ensam. Man vill gärna ha någon med sig som känner till sjukdomen, som kan hantera det om man får ett anfall. Vissa yrken är inte öppna för dig som en epileptiker. Det är en knapp procentenhet av befolkningen som är drabbad av epilepsi. Ungefär 2/3 av dem kan vi behandla med dagens läkemedel. De kan bli anfallsfria och leva ett någorlunda normalt liv. Men det gör ju att det blir en 1/3 kvar som är läkemedelsresistenta, som vi säger. Och eftersom det är en vanlig sjukdom så får ni väldigt höga tal. Om vi tittar här då på bara Europa, USA, de 5 största länderna i Europa, USA och Japan, så finns det nästan 6 miljoner människor som har diagnosen epilepsi. Det blir ungefär 1,7 miljoner då som har en läkemedelsresistent epilepsi. Och vi tittar framför allt på de som har vad vi säger en fokal, alltså en epilepsi som sitter i ena hjärnhalvan bara. Så att om vi tar de läkemedelsresistenta fokala epilepsierna så är det över 1 miljon sådana som har den diagnosen som inte går att behandla idag i de här delarna av världen. Vi adresserar inte alla initialt utan vi tittar på de som är kandidater för läkemedelskirurgi. Som är en epilepsikirurgi ska jag säga. Där man tar bort en del av hjärnan. Det gör man ungefär i 5000 fall per år i Europa och USA. Det bygger ju på att man har en epilepsi som alltid triggas igång på ett ställe. Och det stället ligger på ett plats i hjärnan som går att ta bort helt enkelt. Vi gör ungefär 45-50 sådana operationer om året i Sverige. Och sen sa jag ska säga några ord om vilken potential den här produkten kan ha då. Då har vi gjort en väldigt konservativ bedömning. Vi har sagt att okej, vi vet att det finns 1 miljon som har den här typen av epilepsi. Som är läkemedelsresistent. Vi bortser från dem. Vi tar bara de nya patienterna. De som får en ny diagnosen just det här året. Vi tar bara de som har en fokal epilepsi. Vi tar bara de som är läkemedelsresistenta. Och så ska vi ta 20% av dem. Då kommer vi upp i en siffra som är knappt 5000 patienter per år. Och med den prissättning som man ser på den här typen av läkemedel då, så når vi siffror som är alltså 2,5-3 miljarder euro per år. Och det är klart, ser vi effekt i den här gruppen och ser en god effekt i den gruppen så finns det stora möjligheter att det blir fler som kommer att hamna i fråga för den här typen av behandling. Då tror jag att jag ska lämna ut till Karin lite grann.
Tack Jan för en bra introduktion. Jag tänkte berätta lite vad vi vill åstadkomma med vår läkemedelskandidat CG01. Och för att kunna göra det så vill jag först förklara hur det sker i en normal hjärna. I vår hjärna har vi 100 miljarder nervceller. För att vi ska kunna tala, prata, gå, tänka och göra allting som vi i normala fall tycker är självklart, så kommer varje enskild cell prata med 1000 andra celler. Och det här sker genom att cellerna frisätter en substans som heter glutamat. Och då pratar de med varandra och vi kan klia oss i huvudet till exempel. Det som händer hos en epilepsipatient, det är att cellerna frisätter den här glutamatsubstansen alldeles för mycket i en och samma region. Och då börjar de cellerna prata med varandra väldigt mycket och det gör att man får det här epileptiska anfallet. Det vi gör, det är att vi använder oss av ett virus som inte är farligt för oss. Vi blir inte sjuka av detta virus överhuvudtaget. Vi har dessutom tagit bort allt DNA som är virusets egna DNA. Och så har vi stoppat in 2 nya gener. Och de generna är gener som vi i normala fall har i våra nervceller i hjärnan. NPY och dess receptor. Vad man gör är att man identifierar de patienter som Jan pratade om som har en epileptisk fokus på en specifik del i hjärnan. Och där gör man en precisionsinjektion av vårt virus i en väldigt liten del av hjärnan. Precis där de här nervcellerna signalerar alldeles för mycket. Och vad händer där då? Jo, våra virus infekterar de här nervcellerna och så uttrycks de här 2 generna lite mer än vad de har gjort tidigare. Och så sänker man glutamatnivåerna och nervcellerna pratar inte lika mycket med varandra. Vad har vi gjort hittills, Jan?
Ja, jag sa ju att vi har preklinisk fas. Så vi har ju alltså visat då i en djurmodell, så kallad proof of principle. Och vad vi har gjort där är att vi har utvecklat, eller våra forskare ska säga, har utvecklat en råttmodell som efterliknar den mänskliga sjukdomen. Om ni får diagnosen epilepsi så försöker man behandla den med läkemedel. Om man då inte lyckas, då har man en läkemedelsresistent epilepsi. Då kan man börja se förändringar i hjärnan. Man kan också följa epilepsin, hur den sprider sig genom hjärnan. Är den unilateral, det vill säga sitter på ena sidan och du kan ta bort det, så kan den här patienten bli kandidat för kirurgi. På råttorna så inducerar vi epilepsin. Vi kan se de som utvecklar epilepsi då att de får precis samma typ av förändringar i sin hjärna. Vi kan följa den och vi kan behandla dem då med vårt virus. Vad vi har gjort då, vi har behandlat alltså råttor antingen med en tom viruskapsel utan de här generna som Karin pratade om, eller så har de fått det kompletta viruset. Och då kan vi säga att de djuren som alltså får det kompletta viruset, de får alltså signifikant färre anfall och de får signifikant kortare anfall, och vi ser djur som blir helt anfallsfria. Att det är viktigt med kortare anfall, det måste ni vara klara över. Det är inte bara antalet, utan det är det här som skadar hjärnan om man har långa icke-kontrollerade anfall. Men vi har också den fantastiska möjligheten att vi får faktiskt hjärnvävnad från en del patienter som opereras för sin epilepsi. Det här är en skiva från en sån hjärna, från en temporallobs epilepsipatient som är opererad. Det som är svart på den här bilden, det är den här Y2-receptorn som Karin pratade om förut. Och då kan man då mäta hur går det att skicka en signal genom den här. Alltså hur fort pratar cellerna med varandra. Då får man den där svarta stapeln, om man gör det väldigt enkelt. Sen häller vi på neuropeptid Y som är den andra substansen som vi har. Och så gör man om mätningen. Och då ser man att det blir betydligt svårare att skicka signalen. Den är tvåstjärnigt signifikant sänkt, som man säger på statistiskt språk. Så det är precis det vi vill åstadkomma. Vi vill sänka retledningen. Om man gör samma sak men först så blockerar vi receptorn. Så att neuropeptiden kan inte binda till den. Då får vi ingen sänkning, som ni ser. Så det är just den här kopplingen mellan den här signalsubstansen och receptor som åstadkommer det här. Att du får en sänkning av retledningen. Uppnådda milstolpar under den här perioden. Ja, vi har gjort en långtidsstudie. Det var den jag berättade lite grann på råttorna. Som alltså visar signifikant färre, kortare anfall och vissa djur blir anfallsfria. Vi har gjort om den här studien i mänsklig hjärnvävnad. Och nu har vi hällt på vår läkemedelskandidat. Vi har inte hunnit fram till att mäta retledningshastigheten ännu, men vi kan tydligt se att vi får ett ökat uttryck av de här 2 substanserna som vi är ute efter. Både neuropeptiden och dess receptor. Så vi alltså grundförutsättningarna för att se en sänkning finns där nu. Och vi har tagit ett väldigt viktigt steg när vi alltså slöt ett avtal med en organisation som ska hjälpa oss att ta fram den substans som vi behöver ha i den kvalitet vi behöver ha för att kunna gå in i människan så småningom. GMP står för Good Manufacturing Practice, som är kvalitetsnorm kan vi säga. Så under 2018 så har vi fokus på processutvecklingen. Det här är inte någonting som tar några månader att göra, utan det tar kanske 2 år för oss att ta fram den här. Det är en lång process och man jobbar med levande virus, så att det tar lite tid. Vi räknar med Karin och jag att vi ska ha en detaljerad utvecklingsplan på plats, för nu har vi fått all bakgrundsinformation ifrån Katapult, som är den organisation som vi jobbar tillsammans med när det gäller processutvecklingen. Det är en brittisk organisation som är väldigt väl ansedd. Vi kommer att jobba mycket med affärsutveckling. Idag är vi ett bolag som har ett projekt. Vår ambition är att vi ska bli ett genterapibolag där epilepsiprojektet är ett av flera projekt. Så vi letar aktivt efter att hitta andra projekt som har en genterapeutisk grund. Vi tittar både på akademin och vi tittar på andra bolag. Så målet för nästa år då, det är att vi ska ha det här materialet i den kvaliteten från en katapult så att vi kan sätta igång de här nödvändiga biodistributions- och toxikologistudierna. Det låter väldigt tekniskt, men det är ett paket som man måste ha för att kunna gå in i människan så småningom. Som alltså våra myndigheter, FDA eller EMA, kräver att vi ska ha. Och det finns väldigt noga beskrivet vad vi måste göra. Vi kommer att fortsätta jobba med affärsutveckling för att som sagt akvirera ytterligare genterapiprojekt. Vi har ju fått en väldigt bra extern validering utav våra projekt. Det första var faktiskt Katapult, den brittiska organisationen. De tar inte vad som helst att jobba med, utan de gör en genomlysning av det som man kommer med. Och säger ja det vill vi jobba med eller nej det vill vi inte. Och det flög vi rakt igenom kan jag säga. Sen så sökte vi pengar från Horizon 2020 och de av er som har följt bolaget lite grann vet att förra året så fick vi Seal of Excellence som det heter i den första fasen utav ansökan. Fick vi 500 000 kronor från Vinnova. Och det använde vi till att skriva en affärsplan och att gå in med en ny ansökan i så kallad fas 2. Och i mars i år så lämnade vi in den. I april i år så satt Karin och jag på Gatwick en sen afton. Klockan var väl 8 på kvällen. Det plingade till i min dator. Det var 14 april tror jag det var. Att 2 dagar senare skulle vi lämna in en presentation och ytterligare 6 dagar senare så skulle vi vara i Bryssel för att presentera. Och den 15 maj så fick vi besked om att vi hade fått 3,36 miljoner euro. Och det kan jag säga, den värderingen som man gjorde nere i Bryssel nu då på oss, det var inte primärt på vetenskapen, för den eller forskning kan jag säga, utan den hade man tittat på innan. Det var liksom en grundförutsättning för att få lov att komma dit. Då var det faktiskt teamet som man tittade på. Man tittade på vår affärsplan, är den realistisk? Finns det möjlighet att ni kan genomföra den med vad ni har sagt att ni behöver och så vidare. Och de människorna som satt i lokalen, det var knappt 10 stycken. Det var inte vetenskapare utan det var människor som sysslar med IR-frågor eller kommunikation eller läkemedelsutveckling. Så och det var det jag ska säga det. Vi sökte alltså på vårt epilepsiprojekt då. Och det är ett anslag som räcker i 36 månader. Och ett av villkoren för att vi skulle få de pengarna, det var att vi kan finansiera själva 30% av utvecklingskostnaden. Så därför gick vi ut nu förra veckan med en företrädesemission. Och i grunden kan man säga att villkoren det är 2 på 1. Så har man en aktie kan man täcka 2 nya. Den är garanterad till 75%. Så att om den blir fulltecknad så kommer vi få in 31 miljoner före emissionskostnader. Teckningsperioden är från 4 september till den 18 september. Det finns ett fullständigt prospekt som ni kan ladda ner från vår hemsida. Tyvärr har jag inte hunnit få fram, de kommer idag så jag har inte fått något med mig, så kan vi ta det. Och det finns också en lite kort beskrivning av det, så ni slipper, om ni inte vill läsa hela prospektet, som ni kan ladda ner. Jag ska ta den här bilden för att göra det lite mer enkelt kanske då, att om man har en aktie idag så får man en uniträtt. Då behöver man ha 5 uniträtter och så betalar man 9 kronor. Då får man en unit. Den omvandlas sen till 10 nya aktier och 2 teckningsoptioner. Så man betalar i princip 90 öre för en sån aktie. Teckningsoptionen faller in under september månad för nästa år. Och kommer att ha en teckningskurs som kommer att ligga mellan 2 kronor och 2,50. Återigen, jag tycker vi ska komma ihåg varför vi sysslar med detta. Det är för att vi vet att det finns patienter som inte är hjälpta med dagens läkemedel och som har en besvärlig situation. Så förhoppningsvis är det där sant. Att vi kan komma och hjälpa en del av dem i alla fall. Tack så mycket.
Tack Göran. Tack. Det är ju jätteintressant att höra framstegen ni har gjort under senaste året kan man säga. En riktig höjdpunkt där förstår jag med Horizon 2020-bidraget. 3,36 miljoner euro var det va? Och ställer man det i relation till CombiGenes market cap så är det ganska signifikant.
Ja, det.
Och ni ska göra en företrädesemission nu och ta in ytterligare ungefär 31 miljoner. Och jag förstår att en av anledningarna till det är att man låser upp det här Horizon 2020-bidraget så att säga, som är villkorat med att ni själva delfinansierar. Då kommer ni ha en saftig kassa, om man säger så, när det är klart, hoppas vi då. Hur länge driver det och vad ska de här pengarna användas till i huvudsak?
Ja, som jag var inne på så är ju processutvecklingen och framtagande av GMP-produkten, den är krångligare och mer kostsam när det gäller virusprodukter än vad den är för traditionella läkemedel. Om jag har stått här och haft en liten molekyl, då kunde jag gå till ett antal tillverkare i Sverige och sagt att nu har jag den här molekylen, kan ni göra den GMP? Så tar de ner någon process från sin hylla, lite bokstavligt talat, och så kör de den och så 3 månader sen eller 6 månader senare så har jag en sån. Det här tar 2 år och vi jobbar med levande virus och det finns ingen i Sverige som kan göra det.
Nej.
Vi var tvungna att gå utomlands. Vi hamnade så katapult då. Så att en stor del av de här pengarna kommer att gå till att få fram så småningom en GMP-produkt så vi kan gå in i människa. Det är det som är huvudmålet med projektet. Sen så vill jag återigen lyfta upp aspekterna med affärsutveckling. Vi vill alltså ha fler saker än bara epilepsi.
Är det så att en rejäl kassa då eventuellt kommer att kunna finansiera till och med förvärv av projekt? Eller ska man våga spekulera i det?
Modellen för hur vi ska göra, det kan vi kanske komma tillbaka till. Men jag personligen tror jag kanske att det bästa är att de projekten i så fall blir delägare i CombiGene, att man betalar med aktier. Jag kan tänka mig att det är väl en vettig modell. Va? Om du har en akademisk grupp som är väldigt intresserad av forskning och som kanske inte själva tycker att kommersialisering av läkemedelsutveckling är deras grej, då hoppas vi att vi kan bli ett hem för den produkten och så får de bli delägare i CombiGene helt enkelt.
Det är jättespännande. Är det några specifika indikationsområden då, som ni har tittat mer på än andra i det fallet?
Vi tittar brett nu. I Sverige finns det inte så många genterapiprojekt generellt, så att vi tittar väldigt brett och initierar diskussioner med många akademiska grupper. Så att, vi fokuserar inte specifikt på CNS-området som faktiskt är ett ganska komplicerat område, utan vi tittar på mycket.
Har vi någon fråga från publiken? Det har vi.
Du hade en slide på jämförande kostnader. Var det livslång läkemedelsbehandling som låg i de siffrorna jämfört med CombiGenes?
Nej, det var inte jämförelse.
Kan du ta fram den sliden?
Ska vi se, då kör vi bakåt va?
Precis.
Var det den sliden du tog på?
Ja, nu har de inte den uppe på skärmen.
Det var ganska saftiga belopp.
Ja, alltså nej, då är det så här Rutger, att vad vi sa på den sliden är att om vi har 5 000 patienter om året och vi tar en prislapp, det var den du tänkte på kanske. Alltså, och tittar man på dagens kostnader eller prislappar för genterapiprojekt så ligger de jättehögt. Den första produkten i EU tror jag kostade bortåt 1 miljon euro för en behandling. Vi har sagt att vi ska inte ta så mycket utan vi kanske kommer att ligga någonstans runt 400 000 euro /dollar. Vilket kan låta otroligt mycket, 4 miljoner kronor. Men tänk på att effekten sitter i 10-15 år. Om ni tar orphan drug till exempel idag, alltså så kallade särläkemedel, så kostar de ofta miljonbelopp per år. Och då dessutom slipper patienten hålla på kontakta och vara på sjukhus och sådär. Utan man får en behandling och sen förhoppningsvis blir man hjälpt en mycket lång period. Det är ju inte hugget i sten. Alltså jag visar den sliden bara för att egentligen få fram en poäng att vi har en stor diagnos vi jobbar med. Även med en ganska begränsad grupp av den patientpopulationen så kan vi nå väldigt höga tal. Va? Jag tror att det var poängen.
Superintressant. Vi kommer ju att ställa fler frågor till er. Linus, min kollega, kommer att hugga er och köra en separat intervju. Är det så att ni också hänger kvar en stund sen så att man kan få ställa fler frågor om det är så? Väldigt bra. Då tackar vi så jättemycket för det.
Tack.
Tack så mycket.
Då har jag blivit ombedd att hålla låda en liten stund eftersom mickarna ska bytas plats på här. Ja, vad ska vi säga då? Jag kan berätta att imorgon, eller rätt sagt idag, startar ett event här i Stockholm som heter L6 Nordic Conference, som är då ett partner- och investerare-event som riktar sig, eller med fokus på institutionella investerare. Och där kommer BioStock imorgon att vara mediepartner. Så att undertecknad kommer då att sitta och hålla i en paneldiskussion bland annat, som handlar om hur man får mer institutionella pengar in i biotech. Och det är ju ett behjärtansvärt ämne kan man tycka. Så då får ni gärna hålla tummarna för mig. Ska vi se om de börjar bli färdiga snart. Och vi har en presentation här, jättebra. Det är mycket med det tekniska. So we are ready for the next speaker in our program. I'm proud to welcome Göran Forsberg, CEO of Cantargia, who were actually here earlier this year as well, and it's going to be very interesting to hear about their recent progress. Welcome, Göran.
Okay, thank you so much, Jonas. Very nice to be here again. It's always a pleasure. I would like to start to say that Cantargia has had a very good summer. We have had a good news flow, and there's also been lots of external news flow very recently, which I'm going to go through, which has nothing to do with us, but I think it really supports the case. So I normally always start to put Cantargia in place by showing data from a trial which was made by Novartis and presented last year. It's called the CANTOS trial. It was done in 10,000 patients with who had a previous myocardial infarction, but they were, let's say, at high risk of getting a secondary myocardial infarction. They reached a primary endpoint in that trial, but what was more important to us, since we are a cancer company and an antibody company, and this is an antibody, is that they reduced the lung cancer incidence by 67% in this patient population and death by 77%. And it was a major trial, as I said. 10,000 patients is not the type of trial you see every day. So they have strong data. Novartis has taken this forward and has now started or in the process of start phase 3 trials in lung cancer. And that's really supporting us. So the first trial is in what's called adjuvant lung cancer. And this is patients that have undergone surgery who are at high risk of getting metastasis. So they are treated with canakinumab. But we're also starting a trial called Canopy 1 in patients who have metastatic or locally advanced lung cancer. We're doing it as a combination with chemotherapy. And they're about to start this trial in December. This is a first-line trial. We're also looking at patients that have progressed on first-line therapy, starting a second-line trial combination with a different chemotherapy, again starting in December 2018. And the results will be ready by 2021. But this is a major commitment from Novartis, and I think it really shows their commitment to this mechanism of action, which is very similar to our mechanism of action. So if you look at the system, which is part of driving the cancer and which is part of Novartis strategy, it's called the interleukin-1 system. The interleukin-1 system is composed of two different molecules which are signaling to the cancer cells to do something horrible with us. It's called interleukin-1 alpha and beta, and it signals through the interleukin-1 receptor and creates an inflammatory response which is leading to cancer development. What Novartis antibody is doing is removing IL-1 beta from the cancer and from the blood. But there is another component called IL-1 alpha, still signaling to the tumor cells, so we're not really solving the problem completely. What we are doing in our main project, CAN04, is to block the receptor. It's like having this remote control and having two different buttons to press. And if you only remove one of the buttons, you can still press the remote control. We are removing the remote control completely. so there's no way it can signal. But since we also have an antibody, and antibodies look a little bit like lobsters, they are designed by nature to recognize things that are foreign and should be eliminated. And they do that. So the claws are really what's recognizing different things like viruses, bacteria. And the tail is binding to cells called natural killer cells. And as you understand, these cells are really designed to eliminate cells that are infected by viruses. So what we do is that we attract natural killer cells to go into the tumor area and kill the tumor cells. So we have two different mechanisms of actions here. And we have advanced this project and are now in a clinical trial called CANFOUR. This trial is performed in Norway, Denmark, Holland and Belgium at very well-renowned centers. So we have 5 clinical sites up and running already. We recently communicated the first data set, so we have treated 15 patients. Safety looks very good so far. That's really what you can conclude in these early cancer trials, where you work with patients who have a terminal cancer disease. We still haven't reached the highest dose levels that we are intending. The trial is designed in this way that you treat patients 3 by 3. You start with a low dose. If that looks good, you take in 3 new patients, treat them for a certain period of time. And if that looks good, you continue up to where you reach some kind of toxicity or to a predefined dose level, which is as high as you like to get. And we are in the end of this trial. We expect to present results during fourth quarter this year. And what's happening then? Well, the next step is that we're going into a phase 2A design, and that's done under the same clinical protocol. So it could be, in principle, when the final patient has been treated in phase 1, we can directly start patients in the phase 2 part. So there doesn't have to be a lag time in between. And that will be done in 3 different groups. It will be both CAN for single agent therapy, or it will be combination therapy like Novartis is doing in non-small cell lung cancer, but in slightly different patient segments, and it will be combination therapy in pancreatic cancer. And I will come back to that a little bit more later on. So if we take one step backwards and see what type of company is Cantargia then. So Cantargia was formed 8 years ago, and it was formed around a finding at Lund University, where our founders discovered this target, which is a remote controller I talked about, IL-1RAP, on cancer cells, filed a patent application around this, which we now have granted. So we actually have a patent around using this remote control as a target for cancer therapy or antibody cancer therapy. And we also have, of course, IP granted patents around our product. We have focused on antibody therapy against this target and have 2 different projects here. We have worked hard to get a strong, experienced management team who knows how to develop drugs and how to do business development around this. We did our IPO in March 2015 on Nasdaq First North. We are since summer listed on First North Premier, and we are in preparations for listing on the main market. We have more than 4,000 shareholders today, and we're based in Lund. And the market cap is now well above 1 billion Swedish kronor. And we have cash for approximately 2 more years to go, which means that the clinical activities I'm talking about is already fully financed. If you look at our owner list, our biggest owner is Sunstone, a Danish venture capital fund who has been with us for 5 years. We have 3 different AP funds, first, fourth and second. And we have other specialist investors, both Handelsbanken and Nordic Cross. and we have some local investors who have been investing in the company ever since the start. And the pipeline, so beside our main project, which we are initially focusing on non-small cell lung cancer and pancreatic cancer, but we also know that there is lots of potential in other cancer indications like leukemia, and that's something we need to decide on later on, how to advance that. At the moment, we are really focusing on our main indications. And we also know that there is a potential around this biology in inflammatory autoimmune diseases, and we are designing a new antibody which is more specialized to treat those types of indications rather than cancer. And I'll come back to that as well. But we have two projects in the pipeline. So the next question is, okay, so how many cancer forms is actually of interest for CAN04? Well, this antibody CAN04 recognizes IL-1RAP on the surface, and IL-1RAP is found on a large number of cancer forms. And so I would say 80 to 100% in several big ones like pancreatic, non-small cell lung cancer, liver, head and neck, etc. But also on breast cancer, colorectal cancer. The size of these circles correspond to, let's say, the market opportunity. It's proportional to the number of deaths in the United States. So the bigger it is, the bigger the medical need is. We're also trying to work on biomarker selection here, because when we are positioning our drugs, it's very important that we can select the right patients, and that's something you do with blood samples or tumor samples to see exactly what does this tumor look like, and is our drug good or less good for these type of patients. That's something we're doing in parallel with our clinical activities. Okay, what we have discovered later on is that it's not only if you look at a tumor is a little bit more complex than you would think. It's not only lots of cancer cells, it's actually a large number of different cells. So you have something called cancer cells, but you also have something called stroma cells. You have infiltrating immune cells. What these immune cells normally do is to make the tumor area immune suppressed, so our normal immune system cannot attack it. And ultimately, when the cancer is growing, there are metastatic cells that are going out into the blood. And what our antibodies are doing is that we're actually recognizing both the cancer cells, the inflammatory cells, so we actually can make it easier for our own immune system to come in and attack the tumor. And we can also bind to metastatic cells, so basically wipe them out from circulation. And we have shown that, for instance, previously, that we can reduce metastasis in a model where we measure the spreading of metastasis to the lung. And in this process, inflammatory immune cells are critical to form good environment, a good soil for the metastasis to stick to. You can similarities if you're going to, let's say, put out some seed in your garden in springtime, and if you don't have a good soil, nothing will grow. What the inflammatory cells which we are attacking is providing the good soil. And we are attacking the soil and actually make it more difficult for metastasis to grow. What we presented this summer was that we actually have very interesting effects when we combine with chemotherapy. And this is one example with chemotherapy called cisplatin, which is standard therapy for non-small cell lung cancer nowadays and for some other cancer forms as well. And this is in one of our non-small cell lung cancer models. And what you can see is that if we take the individual CAN04 or cisplatin, it has some effect in reducing the tumor size. But if you combine, you get a much stronger effect. But what's perhaps even more striking is that if you start looking at more details, when you have tumors growing in an animal, of course, the animal gets sick, and at some point in time, the animals has to be taken out. In the control group, 20% of the animals had to be taken out because the tumors was too big. In our group, none of the animals had to be taken out because the tumor was too big. But in the cisplatin group, the animals had to be taken out at a very early stage because cisplatin was extremely toxic. And we all know that chemotherapies are very toxic. But the interesting thing was that when we did the combination, we could actually reduce the toxicity quite a lot. And I think that's an extremely important finding. It has been repeated several times. And the question is, if this is true in patients, of course it is a tremendous opportunity here to continue treatment with chemotherapy in a safe way, because often chemotherapies has to be stopped or reduced in dose. So coming back to our clinical trial then and the way we're going. So in non-small cell lung cancer, we are going to combine with cisplatin and another chemotherapy. Cisplatin is in most cases used as what's called a platinum doublet. And then that's the case in non-small cell lung cancer. So we will combine with cisplatin gemcitabine in patients that have not been treated with chemotherapy before. And in pancreatic cancer, we will use what's a standard chemotherapy segment here as well, gemcitabine and nab-paclitaxel, which is different. And again, gemcitabine is something where we have presented interesting data before on this combination, that there could be synergistic effect, which relates to another problem with chemotherapy. So chemotherapy it's not only toxic, you often get resistant to chemotherapy quite after a few treatment cycles. And this seems to be driven by this tumor inflammation as well. So if you reduce the tumor inflammation like we do, you can also block the chemo resistance and continue treatment with chemotherapy for longer times and get responses. So there are lots of interesting avenues around here which we are trying to explore. And the clinical studies will give us extremely important clues of what's going on. So then just say a few words about market. So the cancer treatment area is growing very quickly, grows with about 10% per year. It passed $100 billion a few years ago. It's expected to reach between 150 and up to perhaps $200 billion within a few years from now. It's very much driven by antibody therapies and the new immune oncology segment, which is Opdivo, Keytruda from Bristol Myers and Merck, selling for $4 to $5 billion already, and expected to reach 10, 20 within a few years. And the existing antibodies, which are solidly selling for about $7 billion per year, which of course is the type of data we're looking for, or sales data. Just a few words then about the trial Novartis did. So they didn't only see effects on lung cancer, they saw some effects on other cancer forms. They saw effects on several autoimmune forms, arthritis, osteoarthritis, and gout. And this is of relevance for our second project for autoimmune inflammatory diseases. So what I've been talking mostly about in cancer is blocking of IL-1, but IL-1RAP, our target, is actually involved in several other pathways, IL-33 and IL-36. And this has potential in diseases like asthma and allergies, skin diseases, etc. And that's something we are exploring together with a US company called Panorama Research Incorporated. And the idea is to design a new antibody which is optimized for autoimmune diseases and have it presented in 2019. So if you look at the news flow you should expect, so I expect to have a good news flow the next years. And clearly application for on main market, lots of new preclinical data. Studies are ongoing on immune oncology effects on combinations. The phase 1 clinical data next quarter, start of phase 2A. And what's also important is that right now we're doing all our clinical development in Europe, but we also need to get into the US to get started with the US clinical strategy, to get more important US sites on board, to get the FDA on board, etc. And during 2019-2020 it will hopefully just continue. And we will start to present data on CAN-XX as well. So a very quick summary on Cantargia. We are very excited about our lead project, CAN04, which has so many different opportunities that are of value in cancer treatment and has a double mechanism of action. And we are extremely excited about the clinical activities we are doing and the potential to treat patients with very poor prognosis diseases. And we have a strong IP to support us. We have very strong investors behind ourselves. We have good funding position, and we are, as I said, hopefully on the main market during this year. So thereby I like to stop and very happy to take questions.
Thank you, Göran. I can ask first if there's anyone in the audience who have any questions for Göran at this point. They may need to think a little bit about it. Yeah. Yeah, you will do.
The phase 2 study will be completed in
Early 2020.
Yeah. How do you see a phase 3 study, cost-wise and time-wise?
Yeah, okay, so a phase 3 study, if the simple answer is it's much more expensive and it takes longer time. But it depends on, so I think a phase 3 trial in non-small cell lung cancer depends very much on if you're going into the early stages of non-small cell lung cancer or the later stages. If you go for, and I think what Novartis is doing is quite illustrative. In the later stages we have a phase 3 trial of 250-ish patients. It's carried out during 2 to 2.5 years. In the early stage, or in the mid stage, it's 650 to 700 patients, and it's carried out during a little bit longer time. And in the very early stage, it's 1,500 patients carried out during 4 years. So, and then the ballpark figure is that each patient costs between 500,000 and 1 million Swedish krona. So I think that tells us a little bit about what type of investment Novartis is doing in this program in phase 3.
So you need a partner?
So the idea is definitely to get a partner after phase 2A. And what we're doing right now is to, let's say, build a database that is going to be attractive for a big partner to buy into and hopefully pay a price that is attractive for shareholders.
And in relation to that question, partnering is the strategy after phase 2A.
Yeah. Yes.
And what kind of measures are you taking at this point to facilitate that?
But of course you have contact with all the major pharmaceutical companies who would be interested. It's like doing marketing. You have brochures and everything, and you try to meet them and present what you're doing, and then tell what your plans are. And that's extremely valuable because you want them to get to know you, to see what's going on, and it provides very important feedback to us as well, what they will be looking for.
You also mentioned the list change. Yes. for the main market, Stockholm main market. How important is that as a parameter in bringing more interest to Cantargia, you think?
No, but what we realized when we been out talking to investors is that there are lots of investors, let's say both private and institutional, that find Cantargia very interesting, but for various reasons they are not interested to invest in companies on First North. It could be that they are, through different internal guidelines, not allowed, or that they realize that there are lots of companies on First North and it's difficult for them to spend the time and to do their own due diligence. But if you're on the main market where certain aspects have been sorted out in the diligence process. So that's my hope. It's going to open up new doors for new investors to get into Cantargia. But I also think it's a quality stamp if we get there. Shows that our internal processes and corporate governance and everything is good enough.
Can you tell us anything about the progress in that process, changing lists?
I think everything is going as planned, but I'm not going to provide a date.
Okay. Any more questions from the audience? We have a few minutes left. What would you yourself then consider? You have a few upcoming milestones. What are you looking forward to the most here? Obviously.
No, but clinical data is clinical data, so of course that's very, very important. And then also getting the, let's say, the uplisting from First North to the main market finished. It's a big project and it's something which would be very pleasing to tick off. So I think that's, for me personally, it's the two biggest milestones. Yeah. But there are also lots of preclinical studies ongoing, and when studies are ongoing, you don't know the results. So there might be some very exciting results coming out there as well.
Yeah. We're going to keep our eyes open for that. My colleague Linus will dig deeper, ask a few questions in the upcoming interview. And are you actually running off to another event, or will you be staying for a little while?
I'll be staying, so I'll be here during the break now.
Okay, perfect.
Then I have.
So if anyone wants to ask Göran any questions, it's possible. So thank you very much, Göran, for a great presentation. And now we're going to take a short break to stretch our legs and maybe have some coffee. You are all welcome back at 11 o'clock. The next presentation will be from Lipum, an unlisted company from the north of Sweden. Welcome back. Welcome back from a short break. We are ready to go on with our program today. Next up is a company which differs from the others a bit because, well, for one, it's not based in the south of Sweden or the Stockholm-Uppsala region, which is normally the case. It's actually from my area in the north of Sweden, Umeå. And for those of you who don't know, in the US, it's placed 300 kilometers south of the polar circle, which is quite unique, I think. I'm happy to introduce to you the CEO of Lipum, Einar Pontén. Welcome, Einar.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, thank you. Welcome to this presentation of Lipum. And before I start, I think I should mention to you that we are not listed on any stock market. So if you're looking for the buy button, you won't find us there. And as mentioned here in the presentation, we have our roots in the city of Umeå and Umeå University and research. And the story about Lipum goes around about 25 years back. Professor Olle Hernell, professor in pediatrics, he was studying nutrition in breast milk for newborn children. And then they discovered a protein called bile salt stimulated lipase, BSSL. And it was clear that this protein is very important for fat digestion in early infancy state. But while they were doing these studies, they also noticed that the protein was present in the bloodstream. And it shouldn't be in the bloodstream, so they couldn't really explain why is it in the blood. And maybe it was secreted from the liver, they thought. So they started to study patients and looking into the liver. Do they find BSSL protein? In fact, they did. And in particular, they found it in one patient that had the disease called fatty liver. And fatty liver is a sort of inflammation. So suddenly they realized and they discovered that maybe this protein has importance for the outcome and promotion of inflammatory conditions. So one could say that they were actually in pediatrics field interested in the nutrition of newborn children, but they had an orthogonal discovery that actually this protein has importance for inflammatory conditions. So they embarked in to study this more in detail, and because of the research, they had access to so-called knockout mice, which means that are mice that are deficient from the BSSL protein. They are genetically modified, so they cannot form this protein in the body. And they ran a trial where these mice, the knockouts, were induced by arthritis. And they used a very well-established arthritis model called collagen-induced arthritis. And parallel, as reference, they did the same experiment on mice that are wild type, that have BSSL in the body. And as you can see on this slide, there was a significant difference between the effect. The wild-type mice were seriously ill and got the arthritis, while the BSSL-deficient mice were unaffected. And arthritis and many inflammatory diseases, they are ambiguous in the presentation. The diagnosis is made by specialists, rheumatologists, that they measure how affected a joint is, for instance. And this is typically measured in a score. So what you will see as response here is the score in terms of arthritis. This model is representative for a disease called rheumatoid arthritis, or in Swedish, ledgångsreumatism. And that affects round about 1% of the global population. Later on, a similar study was done on the knockout mice and the wild-type mice in a test that is used for inflammatory bowel disease. And as you can see, the wild type was significantly more affected than the knockouts. So the question was, can we stop inflammation by inhibiting the effect of this protein BSSL? And a lot of experiments followed. First of all, it was tested administration of an antibody that could block the BSSL protein. And regardless of the way the antibody was administered, the mice that got the antibody was significantly less affected than the control group. Also, the effect of different dosing was studied. So when the dose of the experimental antibody was increased, more BSSL protein was bound and less affected was the test subject. And as you can see in this image here, those that get the highest dose of the antibody are more or less unaffected compared to the control group. Later on, samples were studied from real patients, and that's very much thanks to the university and the advisory. We have Professor Solbritt Rantaper Dahlqvist have samples from real life patients. And what these graphs shows is that depending on the score of the disease, the concentration of the BSSL protein varies in the bloodstream or measured in the serum. It could also be seen that when these patients got a medication, a Remicade, that's a TNF-alpha inhibitor, in the mid graph, when they got the medication, also the concentration of the biomarker BSSL decreased. And to the right-hand side, even more interesting, that during relapse, when the disease is active and the intensity is high, then the concentration of the BSSL protein is increased. And in terms of mechanisms then, the scientists and the founders of Lipum, they found that the BSSL protein is in the neutrophils. And when it's released, it binds to monocytes. We're talking about white blood cells here. So it binds to the monocytes and stimulates the monocytes to migrate to the place of the inflammation, like in a joint. And then it sustains and maintains the inflammation in the joint. Okay, so then obviously we aim for a product that will bind the BSSL protein, and that is a therapeutic antibody that will bind the protein and inhibit this mechanism that promotes the inflammation. And this constitutes a completely new mode of action for treatment of inflammatory diseases. And being different, it also likely that this mechanism will not be an immunosuppressant mechanism. Most of the other drugs used, the most popular drugs used for treatment of inflammatory diseases also suppress the immune system. But as far as we have seen, this doesn't. And one evidence is that we have knockout mice, which means we have mice that don't have the protein, and they are just as healthy as any wild-type mice. So we foresee no relatively significant negative effect of blocking the protein by an antibody. Yeah, as mentioned, rheumatoid arthritis affects around about 1% of the global population. That means that in this market, there are a number of blockbuster drugs. and in particular then the biologicals. The biologicals that targeting the TNF-alpha. And also the prescription trend is to use these more sophisticated biologics, even though they're expensive, but they are used more early in the treatment cycle. Okay, isn't that good enough then? Do we need anything else? Yeah, there is one major problem with these. These are suppressing the immune system. That means that the patient becomes more sensible for secondary infections. That means also that you cannot combine two immunosuppressant drugs without increasing this risk for secondary infections by the patients. Other problems is that round about 1/3 of the patients are non-responders, so they have no effect. Another third actually loses its effect in a time of 3 to 5 years. The prices for these blockbusters are very high, still very high. And this, of course, also attracts the interest for biosimilars. But despite the fact that biosimilars are on the market, the prices haven't dropped that much anyway, because there are very strict registration conditions on biosimilars. And according to statistics from US health insurance reports, the prices for these TNF-alpha inhibitors are around about $30,000 to $50,000 US per year treated. But there are exceptions also, and one exception is for systemic juvenile idiopathic arthritis, where you can see that we have almost $400,000 in treatment cost for 1 year. And then talking about this then, juvenile idiopathic arthritis that we focus on in the first instance is a rare disease. It's a rare disease that affects children below 16 years of age. And there are 337,000 patients having the disease in the US, Europe, and Japan. And if we look into the treatment tree, you know, when you go to a doctor, the first thing you get a pill, and that doesn't work, you get a stronger pill. And then you enter in the treatment tree to a level where you actually get something that helps you. And it's exactly the same for the patients having inflammation. But in the field of juvenile arthritis, that is a rare disease, it has been very much up to the rheumatologists to do off-label prescriptions to challenge the disease in children. And that is important because the children are affected by a way that they get stiff joints, they get rash, they try to hide that they actually have a disease, and they also sometimes have to stay at home from school, and that affects, of course, the children, and the societal cost becomes high. But also in some cases it becomes a lifelong handicap where they need repeated surgery to correct joints and correct bones that were affected by the relapse periods. So what we do, Lipum, in the first instance, we focus on the fourth line treatment where we have around about 20,000 patients. Because on this level, the children, there are no available medication for them recommended. One could say that there were in 2011 and 2013 were new guidelines. There is a new guideline coming now, but most of these guidelines will actually recommend RA drugs that were developed for grown-up people, adult people. They will actually be recommended also for the children. And with the effect that they also get immunosuppressant drugs that can actually affect their childhood. So we have come up with a strategy for Lipum that we will have focus on an in-house development on the indication juvenile arthritis, where we expect to get an orphan drug designation, other benefits from the society that will help us to get faster into clinical trials. The demands on the clinical trials will be less, and we have in-house, around the founders in the company, we have the competence in the field of pediatrics. In parallel, we see a huge opportunity in the field of rheumatoid arthritis, but there the requirements on the number of patients in clinical trials and so are so large that we will absolutely need a partner and do an licensing deal to get into the market. While talking about these two indications, it's also clear because of the very different mechanism of action, and also based on results we've seen from real patient samples, patients having psoriasis arthritis or inflammatory bowel disease, we see that our mechanism probably have impact on a wide range of diseases, going from the autoimmune type of disease to autoinflammatory disease. And this, of course, need to be explored more in detail in the next years. Yeah, well, we are not listed. That means that there are 9 shareholders in the company. The founders still have the majority, and Almi Invest, and then there are 5 other private individuals that are shareholders. We look a little bit more on some of them here. So this is the management and the board of Lipum. Actually, we have our chairman, Ulf Björklund, here today, and Ulf has a very long experience in management of pharmaceutical companies. Still, 2 of the founders are on the board, Professor Olle Hernell and Professor Lennart Lundberg, and me and Dr. Susanne Lindqvist are doing the management. In addition, we have a very advanced scientific advisory board, and of course we have also established a number of well-reputed and competent counselors. And it's very much worth to mention here that already in 2015, the academic people here at the Umeå University, they got a collaboration with the Science for Life Laboratory, SciLife Lab, and that has been, of course, invaluable for us in our development of the candidate drug and the understanding of the mechanism. Our timetable now is that we are just in the process to select the candidate drug. We have actually selected it. One turned out to be a couple of candidates, but we will very soon validate these, and it's also a little bit depending on the IPR situation. We want to test a number, but we will have it in very soon. We will decide for one that we will start production, the CMC work, and then we aim to have clinical trials to start in 2021. Yeah, well, we have very good news today. We received support from the European Union this summer. That's SME instrument and a grant of 2.2 million euro. We announced that today. And just a couple of months ago, we had a grant from SweLife for Better Health project, 1 million Swedish krona. And before that, we had support from the European Union Step 1. And even before that, NovoSeed, that Novo Nordisk pre-seed grant, was given to the researcher of Lipum to get it moving. And all the way through, we've been supported by the Umeå Biotech Incubator that actually, beside mainly not financial support, but management support, and that is also very valuable for the company. Private investors or money invested in 2016, Almi Invest invested 2.5 million, and in the late last year, the management, the founders, and some business angels invested another 3 million. But as you know, We need more money to speed up, do the job faster, and to explore more indications. And now we are about to raise round about 30 million. And by the end of 2020, we expect to raise round about 200 million to enter into clinical trials. I thank you for your attention, and I'm ready for questions if someone have. Thank you.
Thank you, Einar. Very interesting presentation. I'm sure there are questions in the audience. Let's start with you.
BSSL is new to me. We have that enzyme for a reason. But is the situation that if you are healthy, this is not secreted? What I'm aiming at, if you inhibit this substance, doesn't that have any effect on the normal activities in the body?
That's a good question. Everybody have a background level in the bloodstream. So when this is raised, that is what we correlate to the state of inflammation. But for instance, with the knockout mice, where you actually don't have the BSSL, you see no negative effect on that on the mice. But we are actually, you're asking a very interesting question, because we have an idea on getting an accelerated proof of concept in man that would give us that much faster than waiting for the clinical trials. And that relates actually to this question. What happens if you remove BSSL completely from the bloodstream? And what is the turnover? How fast will it be new? And that is also related to the dosing, of course. How high dose do you need to reduce the level? But at this point, we don't believe that you need to eliminate it from the bloodstream. You just have to reduce it. And that's what we probably will aim for. But that is, of course, what clinical trials should do to tell us.
That's a very interesting question. I was actually thinking that the first question many investors would be asking is, are you going public anytime soon?
But now you ask it. Yeah, we haven't scheduled that. Absolutely not. We have, of course, thought about it, and that is a possibility, but that is not in the plan at this point of time. No.
Okay. Yeah, and so given the fact that you're not a listed company, I would presume that you could perhaps be at liberty to speak more freely than some of your colleagues we met here today. And so the general focus, you have a partnering strategy within osteoarthritis, you mentioned. And are there any ongoing discussions?
Oh yeah. I mean, of course, when you meet big pharma, they are very interested, but most of them say, okay, it's a little bit too early. Come back when you've done that, and then you've done that, and you come back and say, oh, very interesting. But come back when you have done that. Yeah. But in the long run, you need to have a dialogue with them to get acquainted with each other. And I think, we met most of the majors. Some we definitely have in the discussion right now. And that's true also for venture capitalists. Yeah. They also need to get the message a couple of times before they understand it properly, so to speak. But as you said here in the previous question, BSSL is completely new for you. But I'm not surprised, because when we discuss this with major big pharma, they never heard about the protein as a target in inflammatory diseases. And that is, of course, quite remarkable, considering that for rheumatoid arthritis alone, the market is around about $25 billion. So that is, of course, extremely unique to have such a novel target molecule.
You're bringing a new thing to the table. You mentioned a financing round. You mentioned around 20 or 30 million you're going to raise?
Yeah, roundabout, yeah.
And that's going on?
That's going on right now. That's
right now.
Discussion we have right now, yes.
And if any investors listening or watching this would be interested,
everybody's welcome to contact us, yes, please.
Okay, and then just go to your homepage and find your email.
I mean, the more bio you have, the better it is.
Yeah, okay. Great, thank you, Einar. We have to go further, but you will also do an interview with my colleague Linus after this. So thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Next up in the program, we have two companies left, and next up is a medtech company from Lund, CLS, or Clinical Laser Thermia Systems, and I'm proud to welcome CEO Lars-Erik Eriksson. Welcome, Lars-Erik.
Tack. Tack så mycket. Ja, vi är ett företag från Lund och vi är inom medtech-branschen. Sorry. We are a company from Lund and we are in the medtech area. And that is a little different compared to what you have heard about now with the pharma. It's supposed to be a little quicker when you work on it. But me as an economist and president of a company, I still think it takes too much time. But that's a fact in this area. We are based on research that was done by our co-founder. I was one of the founders. It was based on a 20-year study concerning using laser to treat solid cancer tumors. And that's our base for what we are doing now. What we use is heat. We induce heat in the cancer tumors. And this gives us a very precise and controlled way of treating the cancer. And during the time, what we started was IMILT. IMILT generates an immune defense, immunostimulating effect on the body, treat metastasis. And that was what we started with from the beginning. The second part, FLA, which is an ablation, where you ablate the cancer tumor, mostly used in early stage of prostate cancer. It's something new for us and came from USA when we were there. They asked us, can't you please use this because we need something to be able to treat this early stage of prostate cancer. And they tried, and they found that this was a very good way of doing it. So the advantage in this case is percutaneous, and it means that the patient can leave the hospital quite soon after the treatment. It's of course less inconvenient for the patient, and it has a lower cost for the hospital. The value that we add for the clinicians are that we have a safe, we have an easy to use system that, as I said before, is very precise. We control very easily the temperature that we are using and when we are going to stop and when we are going to start. For the patients, as I said before, it's a gentle and efficient way of treatment, and for the hospital you can save some money. Not all of them like that, but that's what we think is a good advantage, at least for the patient and for the society. And in the end, we believe that we will have a health economy that will be quite good for the society. The product is a product in two pieces. It's a laser unit, and it's a introducer and a fiber that you see on the left side down. And also a temperature needle. This is what you need when it comes to use of our product. We have today a CE mark and we have a 510K clearance in the USA. So we are in the market and we are able to sell, and we are selling. That's the main point. We started to develop together with a company in Germany a technique when it comes to fiber, because fiber are very important for us. That generates the heat. And in the end, it ended up by us buying this part of the company. It was around 1/3 of their company. And we are now working with this technique, and it has a very good aspect for the patient, and the doctor likes it. On the left side, you see the radial fiber, which is there since beginning. And on the other side, you see the diffuser fiber. That gives a much bigger lesion, possible to take much bigger tumors. And that's something that we like very much, and it has a good effect when we treat the patients. As I said, we have two parts. One is the immunostimulating interstitial therapy, IMILT. And in principle, what happens is that we put the fiber into the tumor, we heat it to 46 degrees during 30 minutes. It's quite a low level of temperature and a long time. But that's the effect of what we have found in the research. After the tumor is dying, let's say in 2 to 3 weeks. It will generate during the time T cells and CD8 cells that it will trigger then the immune defense by generating these T cells, goes into the blood and find the metastasis and kill them. That's a principle of what we are doing. What we have done now is we have done around 20 patients until today in different indications. What we are proud of is to say that of the 7 patients we made in pancreatic cancer, we can see a survival in average of around 15 to 16 months. And if you compare that to what is a level of normal survival, it's between 6 and 9 months. So we see that we have an effect on the treatment, and that has also generated a great interest from the doctors. It's a safe and controlled procedure, as I said, and we see no side effects when we are using it. So that's also a very positive effect. We also received a Horizon 2020 a grant of 2.1 million euros, and that is used since 2016, where we have a number of trials going on. It will end now in November 2018, then we are finishing the ongoing studies we are doing. But we have a cooperation with Karolinska, where I believe, as I said many times, that it will not be one single treatment that is the one that will survive. It will be a combination of a lot of different treatments. So that's why I'm very happy to say that Karolinska is now using our treatment together with their standard treatment for the clients, our patients. And that means that we combined our laser treatment with a PD-1 treatment that they have in Karolinska. This is also an area that we feel is really interesting for us. The ongoing clinical studies that we have today in the area of Horizon 2020 is we are studying pancreatic cancer, and that we are doing in Marseille, we are doing it in Porto, and we are also studying breast cancer in Nottingham. That's inside the grant that we got from the common market. Outside that, as I said, is the malignant melanoma, which we think is an interesting case. What we have found, as I said, it's a safe and usable method for the clinics. We can use it in high, difficult and risky anatomical locations. We use it in severe disease, and we have a very good, as I said, also a patient outcome and survival. Totally around 20 patients is done. That's what I'm telling you about the immunostimulating effect, IMILT. The other case that we have found later on, started 2 years ago in USA, is what we call FLA. It's focal laser ablation. And here you are working with the same equipment, and that's why we had an interesting discussion with our clinicians. You use the same laser unit, you use the same fiber, but you have a much higher temperature and you have a much shorter time. It means that you take away the tumor quite quickly. In Houston, in Galveston, UTMB, which is a university clinic, is using this as a standard treatment today. So there we are starting to sell our products, especially the fibers that is interesting for them. We also have, in this case concerning FLA, a study going on in Toronto. I saw it was published today in the government area in USA. And now we are starting up a new study together with a clinic called Desert Medical Imaging, where we are checking out what possibilities we are for using exactly the same thing as I said before, to treat prostate cancer. And these 2 studies will provide us with the data we need to be able to market our methods and to sell it, both in US, Canada, and of course the rest of the world. In the case of the study in Toronto, we have 25 patients, and up till today we have made 7 patients of them, so it will finish in some time. Clinical cooperation for us today is that we have the University of Texas Medical Branch, as I said, UTMB. We have Desert Medical Imaging. We have Laser Prostate Center in America, and we are discussing with a lot of other clinics that is interested of this type of treatment. Laser is one part of treatment. There is a lot of other treatments, but laser is an area that is very interesting to use. To go to the other case is to say that what we have found out also is that what we need is to have a flow for the treatment, a flow for the clinician to treat the patient easily. And today you sell one part for the stereotaxy, you sell one part for the energy, you sell another part for MR. We are now going into cooperations with companies that we can provide everything except for MR structure. But that's very big company like Siemens and all that who are doing that. So targeting, instrumental navigation, energy delivery, and ablation. That's what the clinician would like to have in an easy way. That's why we have now cooperations with these type of companies, especially in USA. And the other part is that today you're using a lot of biopsies taken from specialized company. There you can see a very good thing when you want to see where is the tumor located, how do I enter into the tumor. But they realize together with us that we don't need only to make a biopsy, we need to make a treatment. So they want to have the full scale, the integration of the treatment also here, good for the clinicians. And that's why we have entered into agreements with Exact Imaging in Canada. And we are now looking into how we can adapt our different way of working by them making the biopsies and us making the treatment. So this is an area that we found out will be very interesting for us in the future. And the third one is an area where it's very important to say that you need to have a possibility to visualize where you are in the body. So you need to have a focus on where is the tumor, how can I reach it? And this is a big problem today because it's not easy to see. Now, what we are doing here in this case is we are developing a new software where we can see the navigation and see exactly where we are positioned for the clinicians. It means that in this case we will be able to deliver the whole part except for the scanner. But the scanner is there, so that's okay. That's a development we are doing with a French company called GTI, and they are very keen on this area, and they are really good on the work on the, let's say, software development. So this is an area that we are now together doing a lot of research and see to that we will end up with a good solution for the clinicians, so that he will only have a flow of his treatment that is working well. And that's very important. Today is using different types of marks and they have to fit together and you have to find a way of buying it. Now we want to provide him with a package, and that's what we have been asked to do. Our recent achievements is that, as I said, we are going to do the clinical study with the Desert Imaging. We also have the cooperation with the French company I mentioned before. We have orders coming repeatedly from UTMB, which are using it as standard. And we have just made a new share issue where we got 49 million Swedish crowns. We have an MOU with Exact Imaging, which is also important for us. And we are also looking now into the study that I mentioned about malignant melanoma with a combination. And that will be very interesting because that, I think, is a field that will be really possible to develop. We have the FLA study of the 25 patients, and the analysis, as I said, of the 7 patients have reached 15 months today, and they are still alive. Not all of them, but this figure will increase, and that is something we are very happy to be able to show. What do we know, or what do we want to do in the future? Yeah, our steps with the money we have received now is that we know we have a sale in USA, And we want to build now an organization to take care of this sale, both in USA and in Europe. And the second part of this is that, as I said before, we want to build up the software that is guided so that you can see that you have a full effect and you have one package to deliver to the clinician, and he will be able to see exactly where he is in this case. And that is really interesting for us, and this is also something that we will deliver together with the French company. We have a fusion imaging project, as I said before. Normally, as I said, this type of equipment is quite expensive, and they are used only for biopsy, which is very important. And they realize that if we are going to be effective, we have to combine the possibility of taking biopsies by a treatment. And we are asked to work with this treatment, and we will, together with the companies we are working together with now, see to that we have a full range of possibilities for the clinicians. Another thing is that we continue to develop the clinical area. It means that what we have seen now is that there are areas that is more interesting than others. We haven't been into all indications. We have been into liver because we have used metastasis in liver to treat pancreatic cancer, and that have been very effective. And we have seen this in the first patient we treated. It was a patient in Porto, and we were a little bit afraid because to go into pancreatic area is a big risk, and the first patient is not the patient you want to try. So what we found out is we would like to start to treat it by treating the metastasis in the liver. And we found with this patient he had 3 different metastases, and we treated one of them, and we found that all of them decreased. They went down quite a lot. And also the main tumor disappeared after a while. This person is a good example, maybe the best example that we have. He has been living now for 3 years, and we are very happy to say that. Now he's probably a guy who has all the things he needs to do, but there are people there who really we think we can help. And what we think is very important in this case is that we make it possible for the patients to stay with their cancer, but to live with it. So that is our idea of the future, and thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Lars-Erik.
Sorry for the Swedish in the beginning. But
no problem whatsoever. We can always edit. So, listening to your presentation, you have a really interesting treatment concept here. I would say generally, people in general have a basic grasp of cancer treatments like chemotherapy or radiation. When it comes to your concept, heat treating or laser treatment, what would you say are the biggest challenges in bringing a new concept like this to the market?
The biggest challenge is the doctors, the clinicians, because they are used to do it the way they have done it before. And I, as an economist, I must say I'm amazed about the conservative reaction in this area. I hope there is not a lot of doctors here. But that, I think, is a big problem. It's a big problem to really feel that you want to take the challenge. I mean, you know that there are patients there who you say, sorry, there's nothing to do. Well, there is one thing to do. You can try this. And that is something that I think they don't want to do it. But I think that attitude is unfortunately a step we have to take and overcome. We have to have a change. And we see a change with the new doctors coming out.
You have a number of clinical trials going on, yeah, and with the aim to then generate data that supports, of course, yeah, your alternative. What will it take for a true breakthrough then, and to change this attitude?
Well, that's a $1 million question. It's nearly impossible to say how long time it takes, but what you need to do, you need to show that you can do something that has an effect on the treatment of cancer. And that we don't know how much. We are now working on a clinical development plan where we are using the facts that we have received to see what do we need to do more. Because if I tell the doctors what I'm telling you here, everyone say, that's very interesting, but where is the data? Okay? We need more data, that's for sure. And it will take probably, I don't know, it will take some time to get it, depending on how much we need to do to prove it. But that is what we do. And we have seen, I mean, we have done 72 patients before our new equipment. And we see a very good effect on that. So, and we have done preclinical studies where we have seen all the effects, ablations and all these possibilities for us. So we know that this is running well. But we have to prove it.
Yeah. You mentioned good results in liver cancer metastasis that actually decreased.
Yeah.
From a layman perspective, that should be an eye-opener for some. But you need statistical significance, many more patients?
It is probably an eye-opener for many people, but it's always there a lot of competition there. And what we have as an advantage, of course, is if you compare to the drug area that is there, it costs a lot of money and you have a lot of side effects. We have to see that we can deliver something that has no side effects and costs less. So that will be our challenge.
I see if we have a question in the audience.
If I just add on to your question, I've seen many examples of these medtech things. I was a doctor once. I'm also surprised about the conservative. Would it be easier if you teamed up with a major player like Siemens or GE or Elekta or whoever who delivers other medtech devices? Or is the problem the same?
That's a good question, and I can say that I think, of course, they have the money, they have the possibility, they have the contacts in the market. Of course, it's a positive thing. It will have an effect. But I'm not sure that everyone will buy that either, because it's a method itself that you have to validate, and you have to say this has a very good effect, it's a good treatment, and you have to prove it. Still, if Siemens or somebody else comes with that, the doctor will still say we need some data, and I agree. We need some data on this case, and can we show this data which we have indicated here? I think even with us it will be possible to do it. But I think the team up will probably be the combination that I said before, with Pharmaca and our method. That's a team that will be a really interesting case.
But I would think that with the same data, the impact would be, my guess, much better in a cooperation with an established big player than a small local Swedish company.
Absolutely, I agree.
So is it then, in your opinion, then more likely that you would team up with a pharma company rather than?
We have two areas. We have to divide them.
Yeah.
One area is what IMILT with the immune defense. That is probably the one we can team up with a pharma company. The other case is a prostate, what I'm talking about, the FLA, where we have in the end a scanner that is called MRI, and the name is probably Siemens or something else. And as I said, we are in the way of packaging this to be able to put that in the market, and then we'll see if we have an interest. Probably we have an interest on those big guys also. Sure, I hope so.
Lars-Erik, you will be going to an interview with my colleague, and he will probably dig more into this as well. Thank you very much for an interesting presentation.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
So we have reached the final point of our program today. We're going to finish off with a Danish company, Saniona, who have a broad pipeline within several areas, and I'm pleased to welcome the company's Senior Vice President and Chief Financial Officer, Thomas Feldthus, who will tell us more about that. Welcome, Thomas.
Thank you.
Saniona, who have...
So, yes. My name is Feldthus. I'm co-founder of Saniona, which I'm going to present to you today. So just initially a reservation for forward-looking statement in this presentation, which of course are uncertain and may not necessarily materialize. So Saniona is a biotech company. We are listed at Nasdaq Stockholm main market. Market cap is today 700 million Swedish crowns, or roughly $80 million. We believe that compared to other biotech companies, we have a relatively low risk profile in the way that we have, as you can see, a very broad pipeline, which means that the value of the company is not dependent on a single clinical trial. Also, we have several late-stage programs, including one in phase 3 and 7 in phase 2, where a significant part of the risk has been mitigated in previous clinical studies. If you take the tesofensine program, it has actually now been tested in 1,600 patients in 13 phase 1 studies and 5 phase 2 studies, and now in phase 3. So we have a pretty good idea about what both the efficacy and the side effects in this compound. Also, many programs are financed by partners and also some by grants. And in these cases, we have retained significant commercial rights. I also think there's a significant upside potential. We have many shots on go for getting a product to the market. The lead compound could be in the market within 2 years. These products are addressing huge markets, and they have all first in class within their respective fields. The lead program is Tesomet, which is currently in phase 2 for orphan indications in eating disorders, Prader-Willi syndrome, and we believe that we can generate significant value in this orphan indication within a very short time and also at a limited investment. And we intend to develop it all the way to the market ourselves. Then I say that we have many partnerships. The CEO and I have entered into numerous collaboration agreements over the past years, both in previous positions and within Saniona. In Saniona, these collaborations have generated income right since we started in 2012. And actually, if you look at the net burn on the company since we started in 2012, it's just about 80 million crowns or $9 million. And during this period, we have financed ourselves 2 phase 2 studies, 2 phase 1 studies, 2 preclinical programs, and 3 research programs. So income for our partnerships has generated income and supported our investment in our own programs throughout the years. Going forward, we will see spending coming up when we bring programs ourselves to the market, but we are still intending to continue these partnerships. Right, so here's a picture of the clinical pipeline. On the top, you have tesofensine, which is in phase 3 with our partner Medix for treatment of obesity. Then we have Tesomet, which we are developing, and we are developing it for eating disorders in US and Europe. First, Prader-Willi syndrome and hypothalamic obesity, both are orphan indications. We also believe it could be used in metabolic diseases, and we have actually reported positive phase 2 studies in proof of concept in obese diabetic patients. Then you have 2359 for cocaine addiction. This is an investigator-driven study. It's financed by grants in the US and it's conducted by University of Penn. We are not paying for this, but we have retained all commercial rights to this compound and also the clinical data coming out of this study. At bottom you have CAD 1883. This is developed by a spin-out, a US-based, Boston-based spin-out of Saniona called Cadence Therapeutics for ataxia and tremor. This is the first program coming out of research lab in recent years, which started in phase 1. We have a minority stake in this company, and then we also get royalties on product sales. For this presentation, I will focus on the lead compound tesofensine, which is going on the market within a couple of years, we hope, and then Tesomet, which is the key value driver on the company. And if there's the time allow, we will look into a little bit to 2359 and also our research portfolio. So we entered into collaboration with Medix in 2016 for the development of tesofensine and our combination product Tesomet in the Mexican market and in Argentina for treatment of obesity. The Mexican market is about $250 million. Medix is a local biotech, pharmaceutical company with $150 million in sales. They're completely focused on obesity, and where they are the market leader in Mexico with a market share about 45%, both by value and volume. The deal with Medix is based on that they finance the clinical trials, they get a small upfront, and then we will get double-digit royalties on their sales in Mexico and Argentina. And then we will retain the rights to the programs in the rest of the world, including the exclusive rights to use their phase 3 studies. So this is a way for us to finance, you could say, late-stage programs. They are running a phase 3 study for tesofensine. They took that first because it was most advanced. 372 patients. It's in 3 groups, will be treated for 24 weeks. All patients has been enrolled. The last patient have received the last day of treatment. We are now waiting for the 3 months follow-up period, which will happen at the end of October. And then Medix can close the database and we can report the top-line data. We have said it will come out early 2019. We may already come with these data in December. Let's see. The clinical endpoint is weight loss. Primary endpoint is weight loss compared to baseline. And then there are some secondary endpoints. The design of this study is very similar to a phase 2 study we did a couple of years back in Denmark, comprising 203 patients. And here it was divided into 3 dose rates. And as you can see here, there is a nice dose-dependent weight loss in these patients. The purple curve is the therapeutic dose, we believe. Here they achieved a weight loss of 11.2% after 24 weeks of treatment. This study was continued in open label fashion for additional 24 weeks, and then these patients had a weight loss of around 14%. This is the double of what you see of the commercial available products in the US today, including Victoza from Novo Nordisk. So it's tremendous weight loss, a very robust result. And given these robust results, we think that it's very likely that Medix will be successful with their phase 3 study. So what could we get out of it? Well, we get double-digit royalties on the sales in Mexico and Argentina. And the Mexican market was $250 million, and they have $108 million about that today, or at least in 2016. We think we can replace the existing market. Medix may also gain market share from other companies, because it needs to be understood that this market is a cash market, is dominated by generics with a relatively low efficacy and significant side effects. We also think that they may increase the market, either because they can get higher prices for tesofensine, or they may go for a longer treatment period in these patients. Many patients today are only taking treatment for 2 or 3 months, then they drop out because of side effects or poor efficacy. Here, they can take on the product for 6 months, 12 months, and still losing 1 kilo a month. And for this reason, it's much more attractive. And this may also lead to that new patients will enter this market, ask for treatment. Only 1% of obese Mexicans are treated today. So there are many ways you can see how this market could double, both of the increasing length of the studies and for treatment, as well as number of patients. And then we have the rights in other geographies. And we may potentially take this to, for instance, markets in Brazil or South Korea, some countries. But we don't plan to develop it broadly. For this, we reserve Tesomet, the next products which I'm going to talk about. And Tesomet is a fixed-dose combination of tesofensine and metoprolol. The only thing we see with tesofensine is that it increases heart rate. And then we have discovered that we can mitigate this by, remove this by adding a beta blocker. And without affecting the weight loss properties. We have a patent on this, which provides protection of this combination until 2036. This combination, fixed-dose combination, contains a new chemical entity. So in countries where we don't introduce tesofensine, this patent will be very strong, similar as a compound patent. We believe that this mixture can be used, combination product can be used for both eating disorders and in metabolic diseases. And we ourselves are focused on eating disorders in US and Europe. And the reason is that we can get much faster to the market at a much lower price. If you're moving in metabolic disease, we will have long-term cardiovascular studies comprising 30,000 patients for years in clinical trials. So it takes an awful lot of time and lots of money to develop this area. Whereas in eating disorders, we get through much easier and faster. So this is the reason for doing so. We are interested in metabolic field, but then it will be outside US and Europe and in combination with, in collaboration with pharmaceutical companies elsewhere, just like medics. Right. So this is how we develop this compound. So a little bit about. I will speak now about the orphan indication what we are pursuing. And the first one we started with was Prader-Willi syndrome. This is a genetic disease affecting 1 in 25,000 newborns all over the world. It's a chronic disease, genetic disease, a complex disease. The most pronounced symptom is that these patients are extremely hungry all the time, no matter how much they eat. They can never get a satiety. They're completely obsessed by food. This is what they think about all the time, all day long. They don't stop. They eat inappropriate food if they can get on with that. Raw chicken, garbage cans, and everywhere, and they cannot be left alone. So it's the main medical need is this acute life-threatening hunger as a hyperphagia, we call it, because it's actually life-threatening these patients. And there is no effective treatment available today, and they have a very low short life expectation. It affects the quality of life also for the patient and as well as the families, and is costly for the society. So there's about 1 to 15 incidents in 1 to 15 to 1 in 30,000 live births. The prevalence is reported to be between 1 in 20 and 50,000. The average is probably 1 in 40,000. That's what analysts put on very often, what you see when they're analyzing this market. And this is supported by data for instance, for the US Patent Organization. They have 7,206 known patients on register, where they have the address and they are members of the organization, which is equal to 1 in 45,000 Americans. And we have similar data for Denmark. This is there we have 130 patients, and this is equal to 1 in 45,000 Danes. So it's 1 in 40,000 is probably a fair good number for the prevalence of this indication. When it comes to pricing, then it's orphan drug, and analysts is estimating typically between $120,000 to $150,000 per year per patient for a product which can resolve hyperphagia and weight loss. This might be conservative. When you look into orphan drug, then orphan drug where there is a prevalence below 10,000, then very often command prices of $200,000 or above if they can resolve a real significant problem for patients. And this is what we think we can do in this indication. If you look at this, then we end up with, we use these numbers, then we end up with a market value, potential acceptable market value of $2.8 billion in the traditional orphan drug markets. And this means it could be a blockbuster just for the market penetration of about 30%. So what have we done? We see a significant commercial opportunity. We think also we can go fast to the market. Phase 3 study in this indication will be just about 100 patients treated for 6 months. It's a relatively low investment. We believe that we could get it to the market in this indication for around $22 million or 19 million euros. So we have started phase 2A study last year, and we had interim data coming out for the adult population where 6 was treated and 3 got placebo. And they were treated for 12 weeks, and we saw a significant effect both on hyperphagia and on weight loss. So hyperphagia was measured by a questionnaire to the caregivers, to the parents. It was questions like, how many times has the patient stolen food within the last 2 weeks? And then they get a score depending on how many times they did. And there was 6 or 7 questions like that. And as you can see here, that the treatment group, the red curve here, the baseline was 10, and then over the 12 weeks of treatment, it completely disappeared. So the patient was stopped stealing food. They stopped talking about food outside meals. They stopped being upset when they were denied food under meals. You also saw a reaction in the placebo group, which is quite common with this type of questions, but then it comes back up again at the end of the study. And this result correlated well with the weight loss. We see a significant weight loss in the treatment group during this period, as well as in the placebo group, there's nothing really happening. So this is clearly the product is working as it should, and this is very interesting. It's not really, we have not seen that kind of things before. I think at least this is what we hear from key opinion leaders and doctors in the field. They get amazed about these data. We did learn from this study that the dose was too high. Normally, we have tested this compound tesofensine in 1,600 patients, as said, and we expect that the therapeutic dose in normal people would be 0.5 milligram per day. But this is too high in these patients. They have a different liver function. This is part of the disease, we believe, and therefore their blood concentration is much higher. And it means that we need to reduce the patient, the dosing in this patient group. And this is what we are doing now. And we have it in a reduced dose, 1/4 of the dose. We are continuing in adolescents now and conducting this study this autumn. So what is the timeline? This phase 2 study could potentially lead to start of phase 3. But it more likely, we think right now, is that we will make a new dose-finding study after that in US and Europe. And in that case, we will start phase 2 dose finding next year, run a phase 3 study from 2020, can file for a new drug approval, and then get the commercial in 2022. Then in June, we decided also that we would move into hypothalamic obesity. This is another orphan indication, has some similarities to Prader-Willi syndrome. In this case, the patient's appetite center has been damaged, most often because of a rare brain tumor, which is a benign, but need to be removed. And this process, either because of the tumor or per the circle procedure, then there is a damage to the hypothalamus and the appetite center. And then these patients get this extreme hunger similar to Prader-Willi patients. And therefore, you could say there are some similarities. It's the same type of clinical trials, the same type of markets, same pricing. It's an orphan indication, but there are also some differences. These people are normal. They have a normal intelligence. You can communicate easily with them. They are very motivated for participating in clinical trials. They have normal liver functions, so we know what dose they need. The dose finding will be much easier in these patients. So we're going to start this phase 2 study around year end, we believe. And then we in Denmark, and 2 centers in Denmark, we have KOs from Denmark coming in and are very interested in this. And we believe that this study will run into 2019. We expect to be a 6-month study, and we designed it so it can be qualifying for phase 3. And then we could potentially start a phase 3 study in 2020. And as you can see with this plan, then actually this development plan for commercialization could even bypass Prader-Willi syndrome. We could get on the market earlier. So the key focus for us now is these 2 indications and get this product ready to start phase 3 in one of these indications as soon as possible. This is the key we are doing right now. Okay, so much about Tesomet, I think, for this time. A little bit of 2359. 2359 is in phase 2 for cocaine addiction with University of Penn. They're conducting a study comprising 80 cocaine addicts. They are treated for 8 weeks, and the efficacy is measured by abstinence of urine as measured in the urine, abstinence of cocaine as measured in the urine during the last 2 weeks of the study. So it's a pretty hard endpoint. And then there are some softer endpoints, and also we are looking at smoking addiction and alcohol addiction in these patients. There is no products available for cocaine addiction today. There's 1.1 million addicts in US and something similar in Europe. And there is nothing to help them, really. Only psychotherapy, which is not very effective. It is a risky area. It's financed by grants. We're not paying for it. It's going a little slow, but we expect that we can come out with interim data during autumn. University of Penn has informed that they will make an interim analysis when they have enrolled and treated a total of 50 patients. And we are pretty close to that number now, as I understand. So this is going to be very interesting, and it could be potentially the first product to enter for treatment of this addiction. Right. So a little bit about our research platform. We have 5 research programs here. We selected SAN 711 for neuropathic pain and itching as a clinical candidate this December. We expect to start phase 1 clinical trials in spring next year. We have great hope for this. We think it could be a complete new time for chronic pain patients which have not very good treatment options today. A market which is above the $6 billion market, something like that. Then in July, Boehringer Ingelheim announced that they also have selected a candidate for schizophrenia in our collaboration, which triggered a milestone payment of 4 million euro, 42 million Swedish crowns, to Saniona. And we can expect that this will start phase 1 about end of 2019, I believe. And then we have 3, you see, research programs down there, which also are moving forward and where we have great hope for going forward. You see there, this collaboration with Boehringer Ingelheim, we got a milestone payment. As said, we have generated income every year. It has contributed to our investment in our own programs. And we have, for this reason, a very low burn rate. Still, yet there's more to come. Boehringer Ingelheim, we can have 90 million euros in milestones plus royalties on sales. And so far, we have only received 9 million euros under this agreement. Yes. So triggering points coming up here, inflection points. We have top-line data for phase 3 coming out around end year, maybe early new year, maybe already in December. Tesomet, then we have completion of the second part of phase 2 study in Prader-Willi, which may lead to either phase 2 dose-finding study or phase 3 study in this indication. This we will start out then next year, and then also have the result from this study next year, if you do the dose-finding studies first. Then we will start phase 2A in hypothalamic obesity, and this will run for 6 months, and then we will have a readout from there then at that time, also in the coming 12-month period. And then 2359, we have the interim data coming out for cocaine addiction during the autumn. CAD 1883, we haven't talked about that. They we expect them to complete phase 1 and start phase 2 studies, either in ataxia or in tremor. And then Sansa will then start phase 1 for chronic pain itching. And then we see some potential new collaboration coming up, maybe also in the coming period. So in summary, we have several late-stage clinical trials, significant progress made, a lot of upcoming milestones, and some of the programs we can take all the way to the market, including Tesomet for Prader-Willi syndrome, huge upside potential. And then we see, also you can see here there's a number of partnerships which have partly financed the company. We have also, during the process, made 3 spin-outs. The Cadence Therapeutics in US, Initiator Pharma, which is listed in Stockholm, and latest Scandion Oncology, a cancer company, which we expect to be listed as Spotlight during this autumn, where we have a significant stake in, actually. Yes, thank you.
Thank you very much, Thomas, for a very informative presentation. I know you have so many projects in your pipeline, you could probably stand here all day. But it's great that you could cover so much of it. What I can ask first, if anyone in the audience has a question for Thomas at this point. If not, yeah, we do actually.
You had some pricing estimates on the Prader-Willi and the hypothalamic tumor. It's quite expensive.
Yes. So these are not our estimates; it's analyst estimate on this market. What I can see is that there are many who have been analyzed. So if you go back to this slide, there's two elements when you're getting price and orphan indication. When you get the orphan designation from the authorities in US and Europe, then you recognize that this is a rare disease, and they allow higher prices than you see in other indications. And then there are also other benefits. And when it comes to pricing, then of course there will be the quality of life. Is an improvement quality of life for the patient itself. This is some part the authorities will look at. How does your product work? And can you save life? And the second aspect of it is, of course, also how many patients are there? Because, orphan drug goes from 500 patients, I saw this earlier today, up to 200,000 patients in US. And there's a huge difference whether there's 10,000 patients or 200,000 patients. So they also look at the cost of society. And then what you see is the number of analysts. If you go on the internet, you can see that, for instance, LifeSci, they have a public analysis where they've been looking into this. And there you see that if you look at the orphan indication and products which have a prevalence of less than 10,000 patients in US and something similar in Europe, then they are allowed very high prices. And the prices of all these products are basically $200,000 per year or above. So when they are, US analysts are estimating $140,000 per year for an indication like this, it may not necessarily, it may actually be conservative. It could be higher, but it is a subject for negotiation and for the clinical data you deliver. And what we need to think about here is, it is a life treatment for these patients. Its life expectations are very short in these patients. They have acute life threatening because they can die in stomach rumors when they eat too much too fast or by choking. They also get, you could say, life-threatening obese over the years, already as teenagers. And this is, so they have severe problems. And their average age is only 30 years, based on studies made in US. This is one part of it. But then you also have to remember it affects the entire family. It's not only the patient's life. They cannot participate in social life, but the parents are living in a state of emergency with alarm systems and locks on all refrigerators and everything, and have a child going around all day long just begging for food. It must be quite stressful.
But if our treatment is efficient, then the life expectancy is more or less like any one of us, or do they die prematurely of other reasons?
So I saw I have seen one scientific paper where they have been looking into, I think, 130 patients, what they died of and how old they got in US. And this is where this 30 years patient, 30 years average age comes from. And it is over various things, but most of it is obese related. But then there are some who are dying of choking, some are dying of bowel ruptures, and then some are dying for sudden death, unknown reasons. Maybe because choking during the night, but you can't really quantify it.
And my last question on that, since there are only 7,000-8,000 patients, I suppose there are a few clinics that handle these patients, then our company should be able to address those clinics ourselves.
Yeah, and this is our intention. So we think that we can address this market ourselves through relatively few clinical centers, and similar in hypothalamic obesity, we conduct this phase 2 study in hypothalamic obesity in Denmark. This is done on 2 centers, and these 2 centers are already managing these patients which we get into this trial. So we can get a lot of coverage in very few centers in each country. And therefore you don't need to build up a huge sales force in order to service this market. This is the situation here.
So you have a fairly easy to control group of patients. You know the ways to the market. You know that you can get there quite fast.
Yes.
You don't have to. Phase 3 study you mentioned. How big would that have to be, you think?
We think it's Safjan had American biotech company had a compound in phase 3 a couple of years ago, which they had agreed with the authorities in the US, and that was a study was about 100 patients treated for 6 months.
Okay.
And this is, you could say, they have kind of paved the way for how this should be done and what we can look at as a reference point. So we are fairly optimistic about that this will be the level. And as said, we think that, including a phase 2b study, we think we can do this for 80 million euros or something like that to get it to the market, to the figure, including CMC cost.
Using Safjan as a reference, they also had like a market cap around $1 billion, I think, before their study blew up in phase 3, and they had problem with patients' deaths and so on. You had quite a serious market reaction when you presented the interim results in your PVS study.
Yes.
And basically there was problems with the patients, not with the drug. Am I?
Yeah, but the problem we had here was that we felt obliged to come out with a press release in autumn last year, which provided more questions than answers. And we needed to file an amendment to the authorities in order to analyze what we saw. And this process took 3 months. So we had to wait 4 months before we could come and answer all these questions we were raising. And the market got nervous and the share price dropped. and has not really recovered from that level, despite the fact that we have coming out with we think, a very solid clarification of the issue we saw. And that was that the dose was way too high in these patients, and we should reduce the dose. And we know that it is the blood concentration which is the key factor for the efficacy of the drug. And we know that tesofensine is effective at a much lower blood concentration. So for us, it's just a simple of getting the dosing right and reduce the dose, and then continue the study. And this is what we've done. But if you're saying that the market cap prior to that was representative for the real value of the company, then we haven't recovered yet.
No,
that's for sure.
Like I said, you have a really broad pipeline, and would love to discuss all of it, but our time is about to run up. You are going to get more questions from my colleague Linus in an interview afterwards. Just briefly, what are the trigger points that you have explained here? What are you looking forward to the most yourself?
I mean, there are two things coming out, I think. And then is the phase 3 study for tesofensine, where we then can see, okay, now we have the data, and we're going to file a new drug application sometimes next year. And then we can see the time coming in for income to the company, non-dilutive income, royalty income for the company in the coming period. This is one part of it. And then the second will be, of course, the part of Willis studies coming out in Q1. Next year, when we have the adolescent data. And this, I think, for investors and existing shareholders, will raise confidence in that this is the real thing. I think this is what would be necessary. We are where we are, but the investors are not all us, maybe on the same pace as us, I know. Yeah.
Given the differences between the patient groups in PVS and the hypothalamus tumor, is the latter study, or the way forward in the latter track, is it dependent on the results from the PVS study?
No. I mean, these are two complete different indications in some way. Retrospectively, we should maybe have started with hypothalamic obesity because they are easier. Prader-Willi is a challenging indication to make clinical trial in. So they are not particularly motivated to participate. They have reduced intelligence, so they have, and many of them, and they're difficult to communicate with. They have difficulties in changing their habits. So just this participating in clinical trials, coming to the clinical center, is a significant problem for the parents because it is changing their daily routines. And there's a number of things which makes it difficult in this patient group. But certainly there is a huge medical need, and the response we got from parents who participated with the adult patient, they are very positive. Actually, they come back to us afterwards and say, if this drug is moving anywhere, then we are certainly interested again, because it really makes our life easier. Okay. So there's a lot of things to come to. Yeah.
Great. Thank you, Thomas.
Okay.
A warm hand for Thomas for this. And that marks the end of this session of BioStock Live from Stockholm, Sweden. I thank all of you who have been watching here and on the internet. See you again next time. Okay.